Some nights, the world feels unstable beneath you. Your thoughts spiral, the day's worries replay, tomorrow's uncertainties loom. You search for solid ground, but everything shifts and changes. Tonight, you'll discover something different, something that circumstances cannot touch. For over 2,000 years, Buddhist teachers across Asia have spoken of a peace that doesn't depend on conditions, a stability that rises not from controlling life, but from understanding its nature. This isn't the brittle peace of avoiding difficulty. It's the unshakable center that remains still while storms pass through. Like and subscribe to support more life-changing wisdom, and know that every view helps others find the peace they're seeking. The stories you'll encounter tonight come from mountain monasteries in Korea, forest temples in Thailand, meditation halls in Japan, and contemplative traditions spanning centuries. Each one illuminates a different facet of the same profound truth that true stability lives not in circumstances, but in how we meet them. These reflections are offered as contemplative wisdom for rest and reflection, not as medical or therapeutic guidance. Let yourself settle now. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the surface beneath you. Your shoulders can release. Your jaw can soften. The breath can move at its own gentle rhythm. Tonight, you don't need to fix anything or become anything. The wisdom in these stories will work its way into your understanding without effort, even as you drift towards sleep. The first journey begins now. In the mountains of southern Korea, during the autumn of 1362, there lived a Seon monk named Wulmyong. His name meant moon brightness, though those who knew him said he resembled less the changing moon and more the mountain itself, steady, silent, unmoved by the winds that bent the pine trees around his hermitage. Wulmyong had not always possessed this quality. He had arrived at Songwangsa Temple 15 years earlier as a young man of 23, his mind churning like a river in flood. He'd fled from the capital after his father's merchant business collapsed, taking with it not only the family's wealth, but his father's will to live. Within 6 months, both parents were gone. The shame, the loss, the rage at heaven's indifference, these had driven Wulmyong to the monastery gates with nothing but the clothes he wore and a heart that felt like shattered pottery, the pieces cutting him with every breath. The abbot, Master Naong, had looked at this trembling young man and said simply, "You seek peace, but you are looking in the wrong place. Peace is not something you find. It is what remains when you stop disturbing yourself." Wulmyong hadn't understood. For years, he threw himself into practice with desperate intensity. He sat in meditation until his legs screamed. He studied sutras until his eyes burned. He performed endless prostrations, hoping somehow to earn the stability he sought. But the harder he grasped for peace, the more it eluded him. His mind remained a storm. Then came the winter, when everything changed. Wulmyong had been assigned to care for an elderly monk named Haegak, who was dying slowly of a wasting illness. Each day, Wulmyong brought rice gruel, helped the old monk to the latrine, washed his failing body. And each day, he watched Haegak's condition worsen, the flesh melting from his bones, the breath becoming more labored, the lucid moments growing rarer. One evening, as snow fell silently outside, Wulmyong sat beside Haegak's mat, spooning broth into the old monk's mouth. Haegak's hand, thin as dried grass, reached up and gripped Wulmyong's wrist with surprising strength. "You're afraid," Haegak whispered. Wulmyong felt tears spring to his eyes. "Yes, uncle. I'm afraid you'll die. I'm afraid I'll be alone again. I'm afraid that everything I love will be taken from me. Heguk's eyes, clouded with illness, nevertheless held a strange clarity. And if I die, then? Wolmyong's voice broke. Then the fear will be true. No, Heguk said, his grip tightening. Then only I will be dead. The fear exists now, not in some future moment. Right now, I am alive. You are alive. The snow is falling. Feel the warmth of the brazier. Hear my breath. This moment, just this, is all that is real. The rest is wind. That night, Heguk died peacefully in his sleep. Wolmyong sat beside the body until dawn, and something profound shifted inside him. He saw how he had been living in a phantom world, a world of feared futures and mourned pasts, while life itself unfolded only here, only now. The mountain outside didn't worry about storms that might come. It simply stood, allowing weather to pass through without resistance. Years passed. Wolmyong's practice deepened, but not through striving. He learned to rest in the immediacy of each moment. When difficult emotions arose, he noticed them the way he noticed clouds crossing the sky above his hermitage present. Moving, temporary. When pleasant experiences came, he received them fully without clinging, knowing they too would change. By the time he reached 38, Wolmyong had become known throughout the monastery for his unusual steadiness. Monks sought his counsel not because he possessed great learning, but because something in his presence helped their own minds settle. Even Master Naong would sometimes visit Wolmyong's small hermitage, sitting in companionable silence, watching the seasons turn. Then came the year the Mongol raids intensified. The armies swept through the countryside like fire through dry grass. Villages burned. Families fled. Refugees streamed toward the mountains, seeking shelter in the monasteries. Songwangsa swelled with displaced people, farmers, to merchants, nobles who'd lost everything, mothers clutching starving children. The monks worked ceaselessly, sharing what little food they had, tending the sick and injured, offering what comfort they could. But resources dwindled. Winter approached. Fear spread through the refugee camps like a second plague. Arguments erupted over rations. Desperate people stole from one another. Some monks began to panic, suggesting they close the gates, turn away newcomers, save themselves. Master Naong called an emergency council. The debate raged for hours. Some argued for compassion without limits. Others insisted that survival required difficult choices. Voices rose. Tempers flared. The usually tranquil Dharma hall crackled with tension. Wolmyong sat quietly through it all, his posture upright but relaxed, his breathing steady. Finally, Master Naong turned to him. "Wolmyong, you haven't spoken. What do you see?" Wolmyong was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice held no urgency, no fear, yet no coldness either. "I see suffering," he said simply. "I see our desire to end suffering. I see the impossibility of controlling outcomes. And beneath all of this, I see something that does not suffer the awareness that holds it all." An older monk interrupted angrily. "That's just philosophy. We need action. We need decisions." Wolmyong nodded. "Yes, we need action. But action born from panic creates more suffering. Action born from trying to control the uncontrollable exhausts us." He paused. The mountain does not control the storm, yet the mountain remains. What does that mean? Another monk demanded. Should we do nothing? No. Wulmyong said gently. We do what is in front of us. We share today's rice today. We tend today's sick today. We open our gates to those who arrive. And when the rice runs out, if it runs out, we will meet that moment when it comes. But we don't abandon our vows because of fear of a future that hasn't arrived. Master Neong leaned forward. And if we all starve, Wulmyong met his teacher's eyes. Then we starve with integrity. But that is a tomorrow problem. Master, this moment, we have rice. This moment, we have hands that can serve. This moment, we have the choice to act from our deepest values rather than our deepest fears. The hall fell silent. Something in Wulmyong's unshakable calm cut through the collective panic. Not because he had all the answers, but because he demonstrated a way of being with uncertainty that didn't require false certainty. Master Naong bowed. Then we continue as we have been. We share what we have. We trust the Dharma. The winter was hard. The rice did run low. But they didn't starve. Supplies came from unexpected sources, other monasteries, recovered stores, the gradual return of normalcy. Perhaps they would have survived even if they'd closed the gates. Perhaps not. But Wulmyong knew that the real question was never about survival, but about what kind of person you became while surviving. One spring morning, after the refugees had mostly returned to their villages, a young monk approached Wulmyong's hermitage. His face was anguished. Brother, teach me, the young monk pleaded. How did you remain so calm during the crisis? I was terrified every day. I couldn't sleep. My mind raced with disaster scenarios. How do you have such peace? Wulmyong smiled slightly. I don't have peace. Peace isn't something you possess like a bowl or a robe. The young monk looked confused, but everyone says you're the most peaceful person in the monastery. What they see, Wulmyong said, is not the absence of disturbance. They see someone who no longer fights with disturbance. Fear arose in me many times during the crisis. Doubt arose. Worry about whether we were making the right choices. But I had learned something. What? That I could feel fear without becoming fear. That thoughts of disaster could move through my mind like wind through the valley. And I didn't have to grab onto them and make them solid. The mountain doesn't fight the storm. The mountain simply is, and the storm passes through. But how? The young monk pressed. How do you just let the storm pass? Wulmyong gestured to a pine tree outside his hermitage, its branches swaying in the morning breeze. Does that tree try to hold still? Does it resist the wind? No. It moves with it, and when the wind stops, it returns to stillness. Just so, Wulmyong said. You don't create stability by fighting movement. You discover that awareness itself, the part of you that notices both the storm and the stillness, that awareness is already stable. It was never disturbed, even when everything else was disturbed. The young monk sat with this, his brow furrowed. So I just watch my fears? Not just watch. Feel them fully. Let them move through you. But recognize that you are not the fear itself. You are the space in which fear arises and passes. That space, that awareness, is your true stability. Years later, when Wulmyong himself was old, Master Neong asked him to become the head Dharma teacher. Wulmyong declined. I am a hermit, Master. I teach best by being what I am, a mountain that does not move. And so he remained in his small hermitage until the end of his days. A living demonstration that true peace is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of something deeper than difficulty can touch. There's something profoundly reassuring in Wulmyong's discovery. He didn't become peaceful by achieving perfect circumstances. He became peaceful by changing his relationship with circumstances. This is available to you too, right here, in this moment. Feel your breath moving. Notice the stability of awareness that witnesses both comfort and discomfort without being destroyed by either. The teaching of equanimity, what the Buddha called upekkha, points to exactly this quality. It's not indifference or coldness. It's the recognition that you are larger than any single experience. When Wulmyong sat in that council meeting while others panicked, he wasn't suppressing fear. He was resting in the awareness that held fear without collapsing into it. Like the mountain that remains steady while winds howl around its peaks, your deepest nature remains undisturbed by the storms of thought and emotion. Consider how this appears in your own life. Perhaps you lie here tonight replaying a difficult conversation, your mind spinning scenarios of what you should have said, what might happen next. The mind creates these elaborate simulations of disaster, and we believe them. We tense around them. We treat them as if they're happening now. But like Higak told Wulmyong, only this moment is real. Only this moment is real. The conversation is over. Tomorrow hasn't arrived. Right now, you're lying down, breathing, safe enough to rest. This doesn't mean denying genuine concerns. Wulmyong didn't pretend the monastery wasn't in crisis. He acknowledged the suffering fully, but he saw that adding panic to difficulty doesn't help, it only creates a second layer of suffering. There's the actual circumstance, and then there's our mental storm about the circumstance. The circumstance might be out of your control. The storm, gradually, can quiet. Think about a specific worry that keeps you awake. Maybe it's money, or health, or a relationship fracturing, or a deadline looming. Feel how the worry lives in your body right now, perhaps as tension in your chest, tightness in your jaw, a racing quality in your thoughts. Now notice, in this specific moment, lying here, breathing, are you okay? Not, is everything in your life okay? But right now, right here, are you safe enough to take this next breath? The stability Wulmyong discovered isn't about having everything figured out. It's about finding the ground that remains solid even when you don't have answers. It's about recognizing that awareness itself, the consciousness that notices both storms and stillness, is fundamentally unshakable. Your circumstances change constantly. Your thoughts change constantly. Your emotions flow like weather. But the awareness that witnesses all of this, that has never been disturbed, even for a moment. Let that understanding settle deeper than thought. You don't need to grasp it or figure it out. Just as the mountain doesn't try to be stable, it simply is. Your fundamental nature is already at peace. The work isn't to create stability. The work is to stop disturbing yourself. Stop fighting with the way things are in this moment, and recognize the peace that was always here. Your shoulders can soften as you realize you don't have to solve everything tonight. Tomorrow's problems will be met tomorrow, with tomorrow's resources. Right now, all you need to do is breathe and allow this moment to be exactly as it is. Just this breath, just this softness, just this gentle release of the need to control what cannot be controlled. Feel the weight of your body supported completely. You are held. You are safe enough to rest. Breathe in slowly. feeling the cool air enter. Breathe out, feeling the warm air leave. Your body knows how to be still. Your mind can learn from your body's wisdom. Let your attention rest for a moment on the back of your neck, feeling it soften and lengthen. There's no effort required. Just notice the gentle release of tension you didn't know you were holding. And as you discover this ground beneath the ground, this awareness that cannot be shaken, another story emerges from a different time and place, carrying the same timeless truth in a new voice. In the ancient city of Vesali, during the time when the Buddha still walked the earth, there lived a potter named Gatikara. His workshop sat at the edge of the artisan quarter, where the clay was good and the kiln fires burned day and night. Gatikara had inherited the trade from his father, and his father before him, stretching back through generations until the origin was lost in time. Gatikara was known throughout Vesali not for his skill, though his pots were beautiful, but for something else entirely. People said he possessed an unusual quality, a steadiness that seemed untouched by fortune or misfortune. When the monsoons flooded his workshop and destroyed 3 months of unbaked pots, he simply waited for the waters to recede and began again. When a wealthy merchant commissioned an elaborate set of ceremonial vessels and paid triple the usual price, Gatikara accepted the coins with the same calm demeanor he showed when accepting payment for a simple rice bowl. "How can you be so unmoved?" his apprentice, a young man named Subha, would ask him repeatedly. "Don't you feel joy when good things happen? Don't you feel sorrow when disaster strikes?" Gatikara would smile slightly, his hands never pausing in their work, shaping the wet clay on the wheel. "I feel everything, Subha. But feelings are like the clay, they take form. They change. They harden. They break. I am not the clay. I am the one who works with clay." Subha didn't understand, but he stayed because Gatikara was the finest teacher in Vesali, and because something in the old potter's presence made Subha's own restless mind quiet, if only for moments. The truth was that Gatikara had not always been this way. In his youth, he had been as turbulent as anyone, grasping after success, devastated by failure, swinging wildly between elation and despair. He had married a woman he loved desperately, built his workshop with borrowed money, dreamed of becoming the most celebrated potter in all of Magadha. Then, in a single month, everything collapsed. His wife died giving birth to a stillborn son. His creditors demanded immediate payment. A fire in the kiln destroyed his finest work just before a crucial exhibition. Gatikara stood in the ashes of his workshop, howling at the sky, demanding to know what he had done to deserve such punishment. It was in this state that he first encountered the Buddha, who was passing through Vesali with a group of monks. Gatikara, wild-eyed and covered in soot, had accosted the Buddha on the road. "Tell me, teacher," Gatikara said, his voice raw, "why does the universe delight in crushing us? I tried to be good. I worked hard. I harmed no one. And still, everything I loved was taken from me." The Buddha looked at him with eyes that held no judgment, only a deep understanding. "Come," he said simply. "Walk with me." They walked in silence for some time, following a path along the river. Finally, the Buddha stopped and picked up a stone from the riverbank. He held it out to Gatikara. "Is this stone wet or dry?" Gatikara looked. "Wet, on one side." The river touched it. "And if I throw it into the river, what happens? It gets wetter. And if I leave it in the sun, it dries." The Buddha nodded. The stone itself, its essential nature, does it change? Or does only its condition change? Gatikara frowned, not seeing the point. The stone is still a stone. Just so, the Buddha said. You are still you. Whether life brings rain or sunshine, the conditions change. Wet becomes dry. Dry becomes wet. But the confusion comes when you believe you are the condition rather than what remains constant beneath the conditions. I don't understand, Gatikara said, frustration rising in him. The Buddha placed the stone in Gatikara's palm. You said the universe took everything from you. But did the universe give those things to you first? Or were they always temporary guests in your life? Bound by the nature of all conditioned things to arise and pass away, something cracked open in Gatikara's chest. He saw suddenly how he had built his entire sense of self around things that were, by their very nature, impermanent. His wife, he had loved her, yes, but he had also needed her to exist so that he could be a husband, so that his identity could be stable. His success, he had worked for it, yes, but he had also needed it to prove his worth, to quiet the voice that said he wasn't enough. I made everything depend on conditions I couldn't control, Gatikara whispered. And now, the Buddha asked gently, now I have nothing. Look again, the Buddha said. You have breath. You have awareness. You have hands that know their craft. You have the capacity to begin again. These were always the only things that were truly yours. Everything else was borrowed. Gatikara stood there for a long time, holding the stone, feeling the truth of those words settle into his bones. When he finally looked up, the Buddha was already walking away, rejoining his monks. Gatikara never saw him again, but that brief encounter rewrote his understanding of existence. He returned to his workshop and began rebuilding. But this time, he built differently. Each pot he threw on the wheel became a meditation on impermanence. He would shape the clay with complete attention, honoring the form as it emerged under his hands. And then whether the pot cracked in the kiln or sold for a good price or sat unsold for months, he remained inwardly unchanged. Not because he didn't care, but because he had found something in himself that didn't rise and fall with circumstances. The years passed. Gatikara's reputation grew, not because he sought fame, but because his work carried a certain quality, a presence that people could feel even if they couldn't name it. His pots were simple, elegant, functional. They bore the marks of honest work, the slight unevenness of a hand-thrown rim, the fingerprints visible in the glaze. People bought them not because they were perfect, but because they somehow transmitted the potter's peace. Then came the year of the great drought. The rains failed for 3 consecutive seasons. The river that supplied Gatikara's clay dwindled to a muddy trickle. Crops withered in the fields. Food became scarce, then scarcer. The market for pottery collapsed entirely. Who buys decorative vessels when they're struggling to find food? Gatikara watched his savings dwindle. He sold his extra tools, then his spare kiln. He ate less. His apprentice, Suba, grew increasingly anxious, watching their livelihood disappear day by day. Master, Suba said one morning, his voice tight with worry, we have perhaps 2 months of rice left. No one is buying. The clay is almost gone. What will we do? Gatikara continued trimming a pot, his movements precise and unhurried. We will do what we're doing now. We will make pots. But no one is buying pots. That's not my concern, Gatikara said calmly. My concern is whether I'm making pots with integrity, Whether someone buys them is their concern. Subha wanted to scream. How could the master be so unconcerned? Didn't he see they were heading toward destitution? But something in Gatikara's steady hands, the absolute certainty in his movements, prevented Subha from erupting. Instead, he asked, "Aren't you afraid?" Gatikara paused then. Setting down his tools, he looked at his apprentice with compassion. "Fear arises. Yes, I feel it in my belly, a tightness. I notice thoughts of disaster spinning through my mind. What if I starve? What if I lose the workshop? What if I end up begging in the streets?" These thoughts appear, like clouds crossing the sky. "And then what?" Subha whispered. "And then I come back to this," Gatikara said, gesturing to the pot on the wheel. "This is real. This clay, these hands, this moment. The disaster scenarios are not real, they're imagination. Perhaps they'll come true, perhaps not. But right now, the only truth is this: I have clay, I have skill, I have this work to do. So I do it." "But that doesn't solve the problem." "What problem?" Gatikara asked gently. "That we're running out of money." "Ah," Gatikara said. "That's a condition. Conditions change. Always have. Always will. If I let my peace depend on conditions being a certain way, I'll never have peace because conditions never stop changing." He returned to his work, and after a moment, added, "Subha, I'm not unconcerned. I'm simply not letting concern become panic. I'm doing what I can do, making good pots, living simply, treating each day as it comes. The rest is not in my hands." 3 weeks later, as Subha and Gatikara sat eating their meager evening meal, a messenger arrived from the royal palace. The king's eldest daughter was to be married. The wedding would be a grand affair, a symbol of hope during difficult times. The king wanted the finest potter in Visali to create 200 vessels for the wedding feast plates, bowls, serving dishes, all in Gatikara's distinctive style. The payment offered would sustain the workshop for 3 years. Subha nearly wept with relief. "You see, Master, everything worked out. The universe provided." But Gatikara's expression remained unchanged, neither elated nor vindicated. "The universe provided work," he said simply. "Tomorrow it might provide something else. Or nothing. This changes nothing essential." Subha felt frustrated again. "How can you not be happy about this?" "I am content," Gatikara said. "But I was content yesterday too, when we had almost nothing. And I'll be content tomorrow, whatever comes. That's not coldness, Subha. It's not resignation. It's simply knowing where real stability lives." "And where is that?" Gatikara held up his hands, palms up. "Here, in these hands that work, whether the kiln is full or empty. In this breath that breathes whether fortune smiles or frowns. In this awareness that watches both prosperity and poverty without being destroyed by either. The conditions of my life change like weather. But I, the one who experiences all conditions, I remain." They worked for weeks on the wedding commission, and Gatikara poured all his skill into each piece. But Subha noticed something remarkable. The master worked with the same care, the same presence, the same unhurried attention that he'd shown when making simple rice bowls with no buyer in sight. The importance of the commission didn't make him more invested. The prestige didn't make him more careful. He simply worked as he always worked, completely present, completely sincere, completely at peace. The wedding was a magnificent affair. Gatikara's vessels were praised throughout the kingdom. Nobles from distant cities began commissioning work from him. His fame grew, and through it all, Subha watched his master remain exactly as he had been, neither inflated by success nor diminished by difficulty, like a mountain that allows all weather to pass through without being changed. One evening, many years later, when Subha had become a master potter himself, and Gatikara was very old, they sat together in the workshop, watching the kiln fire glow in the darkness. "Master," Subha said, "I think I finally understand what you tried to teach me all those years ago." "Tell me," Gatikara said, his voice soft with age. "The peace you have, it's not because your life is easy or because you don't care about outcomes. It's because you found something in yourself that doesn't depend on outcomes. You found the part of you that remains stable no matter what's happening." Gatikara smiled in the firelight. "And have you found it too?" "I'm beginning to," Subha said. "Some days I lose it. I get caught up in worry or excitement or planning. But more and more, I remember to come back, to feel my hands in the clay, to notice that beneath all the drama, there's something that's never disturbed. That's all any of us can do." Gatikara said, "Come back. Again and again. Notice the storms. Yes, feel them fully. But remember, you are not the storm. You are the sky that holds the storm. And the sky is never damaged by weather." Gatikara died peacefully the following winter, sitting in his workshop, his hands resting in a bowl of clay. They said he simply closed his eyes and stopped breathing, as calmly as he had done everything else. And Subha, finding him there, wept not from despair, but from gratitude for having known someone who had discovered what it means to be truly unshakable. Gatikara's teaching lives in his hands, in his unwavering presence, whether making royal vessels or simple bowls. This is the heart of equanimity, not detachment from life, but a deep engagement with life that doesn't make your peace dependent on life going a certain way. Feel your own hands right now, wherever they rest. These hands have held both joy and sorrow. They've worked and rested, created and released. And they're still here, still capable, regardless of what they've been through. The Buddha's teaching to Gatikara points to something crucial. We suffer not because life is difficult, but because we confuse ourselves with our circumstances. When we identify as someone who has enough money, then poverty threatens our very existence. When we identify as someone whose life is going well, then any reversal feels like annihilation. But beneath these constructed identities, there's a simpler truth. You are the awareness that experiences all circumstances without being defined by any of them. You are the awareness that experiences all circumstances without being defined by any of them. Consider how this shows up when you can't sleep. Perhaps your mind fixates on something that went wrong today, replaying it endlessly, trying to figure out how to fix it. The thoughts spin faster and faster, and you feel more and more unsettled. But here's what Gatikara discovered. The unsettled feeling and the awareness of the unsettled feeling are not the same thing. One is the storm. The other is the sky. One is turbulent. The other is completely at peace, simply witnessing the turbulence. This isn't about spiritually bypassing genuine concerns. Gatikara didn't pretend the drought wasn't real or that running out of money didn't matter. He felt the fear in his belly. He noticed the thoughts of disaster. But he didn't let those feelings and thoughts convince him that his essential stability was threatened. He kept coming back to what was actually real in the present moment: his hands, his breath, his work, his capacity to meet this moment with integrity. Think about the difference between weather and climate. Weather changes constantly, sunny then stormy, hot then cold, calm then turbulent. But the climate, the larger pattern, the stable system that holds all weather that remains consistent. Your daily experiences are like weather. Some days bring sunshine, some bring storms. But your fundamental nature, your awareness itself, is like climate, the vast, stable system that can hold any weather without being destroyed. Your body already knows this. Your breath doesn't stop when you're anxious, it keeps breathing, steady and reliable. Your heart doesn't stop when you're afraid, it keeps beating, faithful and constant. There's a wisdom in the body that the mind forgets. The body knows how to keep functioning through all conditions. The mind can learn from this. The mind can learn from this. Let yourself feel the stability of your body right now. The mattress beneath you isn't panicking about tomorrow. The pillow under your head isn't worried about yesterday. Only the thinking mind creates these phantom times. Everything else simply is, present and stable in this eternal now. Gatikara's hands shaped clay the same way whether he was rich or poor, praised or ignored. He had found the place in himself that wasn't affected by external conditions. This is available to you, not as something to achieve, but as something to notice that's already here. The part of you that's reading these words, taking in these ideas that awareness itself is unshakable. It's been with you through every experience you've ever had. It's never been damaged. It's never been less than whole. Breathe into that understanding. You don't have to become unshakable. You are already the unshakable awareness that witnesses shakeable experiences. The project is simply to remember this, again and again, until the remembering becomes effortless. Let your breath deepen slightly, filling your belly with gentle ease. There's no rush, no urgency, nowhere to get to. Your body is already home. Allow your attention to rest on your chest, feeling the subtle rise and fall. Each breath carries you deeper into this groundless ground, this stability that doesn't need circumstances to cooperate. And as the potter's piece settles into your bones, another voice calls from across centuries and mountains, speaking the same truth in different words. In 18th century Japan, in a small mountain village near Kyoto, there lived a Zen teacher named Ryokan. He was not famous. He held no position at any great monastery. He lived alone in a tiny hermitage, barely large enough to shelter him from the rain, surviving on donations of rice from villagers and whatever vegetables he could coax from the rocky soil. Those who knew Ryokan said he was either the wisest man in the province or the simplest fool. It was hard to tell which. He would spend entire afternoons playing with children in the village square, apparently forgetting he was a monk and a teacher. He wrote poetry on scraps of paper and left them scattered wherever he went. He owned 3 possessions: his robe, his begging bowl, and a collection of stones he'd gathered from the river because he found them beautiful. But it was Ryokan's peculiar relationship with worry that most puzzled people. He seemed to have completely forgotten how to do it. One winter morning, a wealthy merchant named Takeda climbed the mountain path to Ryokan's hermitage. Takeda had recently lost a fortune in a failed silk venture, and the worry was consuming him. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except the disaster that had befallen him. Someone in the village had suggested he speak with Ryokan. Though they'd warned him the old monk was eccentric, Takeda found Ryokan sitting outside his hermitage despite the cold, watching snow fall onto pine branches. Teacher, Takeda said, bowing formally, I need your wisdom. I'm drowning in anxiety and I don't know how to. Ryokan held up one finger, silencing him. Look, he said, pointing at a pine branch weighted down with snow. As they watched, the branch bent lower and lower under the accumulating weight. Just when it seemed it must break, the branch suddenly released all its snow in a soft cascade, springing back upward, free and light again. The branch doesn't try to hold the snow forever, Ryokan said. It lets go when the weight becomes too much. This is wisdom. Takeda felt frustration rising. That's very poetic, but I have real problems. I've lost everything. My creditors are demanding payment. My family's future is in jeopardy. I need practical guidance, not metaphors about trees. Ryokan looked at him with eyes that held no judgment, only curiosity. You say you've lost everything, but you're here. You're breathing. You climbed a mountain this morning. How is this everything? I've lost my money, Takeda said, his voice rising. My business, my reputation, the security I spent 20 years building. Ryokan said. So you've lost some conditions that were always temporary. Tell me, did you create those things? Or did they arise from countless causes and conditions beyond your control? Takeda paused. I worked for them. Yes. And the silk market, did you control that? The weather that affected the silkworms, did you control that? The decisions of other merchants, the whims of fashion, the economic forces flowing through the whole country, did you control any of that? No. But then you were never in control, Ryokan said gently. You were a man riding on a river, sometimes in calm waters, sometimes in rapids. The river was always flowing. You just mistook temporary calm for permanent stability. Takeda felt something crack inside him. So I should just accept ruin? Do nothing? Did I say that? Ryokan stood, brushing snow from his thin robe. Kame, walk with me. They walked down the mountain path together, Ryokan moving with surprising nimbleness for a man of his age. He stopped periodically to point out things: a bird's nest in a bare tree, tracks of a rabbit in the snow, a particular quality of light filtering through the clouds. You see how I walk? Ryokan asked. I don't know if I'll slip on ice. I don't know if a branch might fall. I don't know if my next breath will come. But I take each step anyway. Not because I'm certain of the outcome, but because this step is the only one I can actually take. He paused, turning to face Takeda. Your mind right now is taking 1,000 steps into an imagined future. You're living through bankruptcy that hasn't happened, shame that exists only in your thoughts, suffering that is entirely optional. Meanwhile, this moment, this actual, real moment, you're missing entirely. But I have to plan. I have to figure out what to do. Planning. Yes. Ryokan agreed. Productive thinking. Yes. But worry? Worry is planning's anxious cousin who solves nothing and disturbs everything. He bent down and picked up a small stone from the path. I'm going to drop this stone. Watch carefully. Ryokan held the stone at shoulder height, then released it. It fell to the ground with a small thud. Did you see me worry about whether gravity would work? Ryokan asked. Did I agonize over whether the stone would fall or float away? That's absurd. Of course it would fall. Exactly, Ryokan said. Some things follow natural law. They will happen or not happen regardless of your worry. Your worry changes nothing about them. So why waste your precious energy on worry when that energy could go toward wise action? They reached the village, where children were playing in the snow. Ryokan immediately joined them, laughing and throwing snowballs with the same seriousness he'd shown discussing philosophy. Takeda watched, baffled. Here was a man who owned nothing, living in poverty by choice, and yet he played like someone without a care in the world. After a while, Ryokan left the children and rejoined Takeda. Do you know why I play with them? Because you're avoiding adult responsibilities? Ryokan laughed. Because they remember something we forget. Watch that little girl. He pointed to a child of perhaps 5, who was building a snow figure with complete concentration. She's not worried about whether it will melt. She's not anxious about whether other children will like it. She's simply building, fully present in the act of creation. When it melts, she'll build another. When she's called home, she'll leave without clinging. This is freedom. I'm not a child, Takeda said stiffly. No, Ryokan agreed. You've learned to carry burdens children don't yet know exist. But tell me, who taught you that you must suffer about the future before it arrives? Who convinced you that worry was the same as responsibility? Takeda had no answer. They walked in silence back toward the hermitage. Finally, Takeda spoke. Teacher, I don't know how to stop worrying. It feels like if I'm not worrying, I'm being irresponsible. The worry feels like it's keeping me safe somehow, like by imagining the worst, I'm preparing for it. Ryokan nodded. Yes, the mind believes this lie. It thinks worry is protection. But tell me, has worry ever actually prevented a single disaster, or has it just made you suffer before the disaster, during the disaster, and after the disaster, tripling your pain? They reached the hermitage. Ryokan gestured for Takeda to sit. He went inside briefly and returned with 2 cups of tea so weak it was barely colored water. This is all I have to offer, Ryokan said without apology. I could worry that it's inadequate. I could be embarrassed that a wealthy merchant must drink peasant tea. But the tea is what it is. The moment is what it is. My circumstances are what they are. No amount of disturbance on my part changes these facts. Takeda sipped the weak tea. Something in Ryokan's complete lack of shame, his utter comfort with having so little, began to soften something in Takeda's chest. How did you become like this? Takeda asked quietly. Weren't you ever driven by ambition? Didn't you ever want security? Oh yes, Ryokan said. I was like you once. I trained at a great monastery. I studied with famous masters. I imagined becoming an abbot, earning respect, having influence. But then something happened. He paused, gazing at the mountains. My teacher gave me a koan, a question that cannot be answered by the thinking mind. The question was, what is your original face before your parents were born? I worked on this question for 3 years. I thought about it constantly. I worried I would never solve it. I compared myself to other students who seemed to be making progress. The anxiety was suffocating. And then one day I was walking by a stream. I saw my reflection in the water, and a fish swam through it, completely destroying the image. And in that moment, I saw I had been trying to find stability in something that was always flowing, always changing. The image in the water, my idea of myself, my plans, my fears, my hopes, none of it was solid. It was all just patterns of light on moving water. And beneath it all, something that was never disturbed by any pattern. What was that? Takeda asked. The awareness itself, the consciousness that watched the reflection appear and disappear, that awareness, it's not affected by what it observes. Your worry appears in awareness. Your fear appears in awareness. Your loss appears in awareness. But the awareness itself, completely untouched, completely stable. It's always been there, and it will always be there, regardless of what passes through it. Ryokan leaned forward. You think you've lost your stability because you've lost your money. But your stability was never in your money. It's in the awareness that experienced having money and now experiences not having money. That awareness hasn't lost anything. It hasn't changed at all. Takeda sat with this. He could feel truth in the words, but couldn't quite grasp it fully. I don't know if I understand, he admitted. You will, Ryokan said. Not through understanding, but through noticing. Start small. When worry arises, just notice. Worry is here. Don't fight it. Don't feed it. Just notice it the way you'd notice a cloud passing across the sky. The cloud is there, and then it's not. But the sky, the vast awareness that holds all clouds that never changes. Takeda visited Ryokan many times over the following months. Each time, he found the old monk doing something different, writing poetry, mending his robe with clumsy stitches, walking mindfully around his hermitage, sitting in meditation. But regardless of the activity, Ryokan emanated the same quality, a deep, unshakable ease with things exactly as they were. Gradually, Takeda began to understand, not through intellectual insight, but through slow, patient observation. He noticed how worry would arise in his mind like weather, dramatic and consuming. And he noticed that he could watch it arise without becoming it. He could feel the anxious energy in his body without believing the catastrophic stories his mind was telling. His financial situation didn't immediately improve, but his relationship with the financial situation transformed. He took practical actions, negotiated with creditors, sold unnecessary possessions, found simpler ways to live. But he did these things from a place of calm clarity rather than panic. And he noticed something remarkable. Solutions appeared more easily when he wasn't drowning in anxiety. One spring morning, Takeda climbed the mountain path again, this time not seeking help, but simply wanting to thank Ryokan. He found the old monk sitting outside, watching cherry blossoms fall. Teacher, Takeda said, bowing deeply, I wanted to tell you I'm finding peace even though my circumstances haven't fully resolved. I still don't have much money. I still face uncertainty. But somehow, I'm okay. I've stopped worrying constantly, and my life is lighter. Ryokan smiled. You discovered what was always true. The peace was never in the circumstances. It was in you, waiting to be noticed. But how do I keep it? Takeda asked. How do I make sure I don't fall back into worry? You can't keep it, Ryokan said, because it's not something you possess. It's what you are. You'll forget, many times. The old patterns of mind will reassert themselves. And that's fine. Each time you forget, you simply remember again. It's like these cherry blossoms, they fall, and next year they bloom again. The forgetting and remembering are natural. Don't worry about the forgetting. He laughed at his own words. Don't worry about the forgetting. You see, even worry about losing peace is just more worry. Trust this. The stability you've found isn't fragile. It's the most solid thing there is. You can't actually lose it, because it's your fundamental nature. You can only temporarily forget to notice it. Takeda sat beside his teacher, watching the blossoms fall, feeling something ancient and wordless settling into his bones. The cherry blossoms would fall. The seasons would change. His business might recover or it might not. But beneath all of that, something remained constant, the simple, profound fact of awareness itself, unmoved by any condition, untouched by any circumstance, at peace in the middle of everything. Ryokan's teaching points to something we all experience but rarely recognize: the difference between productive thinking and destructive worry. Productive thinking helps you navigate challenges. Worry just rehearses suffering about challenges that may never arrive. Right now, feel the difference in your own body. When you think practically about tomorrow, I need to call that person. To handle that task, there's a clarity, a directionality. When you worry, what if everything goes wrong? What if I'm not enough? There's a spinning, a tightness, a sense of being trapped in loops that go nowhere. The branch that releases its snow demonstrates a profound principle. There's a natural limit to what you can carry. Your mind can only hold so much worry before something must let go. But why wait until the breaking point? Why not practice letting go now, in this moment? When you're safe in your bed and there's nothing requiring action except rest, why not practice letting go now? In this moment, think about Takeda's realization that he'd been living 1,000 future disasters while missing the actual present moment. This is what worry does. It colonizes your consciousness with phantom problems, making you suffer through scenarios that exist only in imagination. Meanwhile, this breath, this warmth, this safety of lying down, all of this goes unnoticed, unappreciated, unused as the source of peace it actually is. Ryokan found freedom not by eliminating problems, but by changing his relationship with problems. He had real challenges: poverty, cold, hunger at times. But he didn't add a second layer of suffering by being disturbed about being disturbed. He felt cold, and that was all. He felt hunger, and that was all. He didn't make elaborate stories about what the cold or hunger meant about him or his life or his future. You can practice this right now with whatever discomfort is present. Maybe your mind is racing, or your body feels restless, or you're aware of something you need to handle tomorrow. Can you feel the experience directly without the story? The racing mind is just sensation and movement. The restlessness is just energy. The thing you need to handle tomorrow isn't happening now. Right now, there's only the thought of it, which is just another passing mental event. Notice how worry pretends to be useful. It masquerades as responsibility, as preparedness, as caring. But Ryokan saw through this disguise. Worry prepares nothing. It solves nothing. It's just the mind spinning in place, creating the illusion of control over uncontrollable things. Real preparation is clear-minded planning. Real responsibility is wise action. Real caring is showing up with presence. None of these require worry. The awareness that Ryokan pointed to the consciousness that watches worry without being worried, that's your original face. Your nature before any circumstance arose. It's been with you since before you can remember. It was there in childhood, in every phase of your life, through every experience of joy and sorrow. And it's never been disturbed. Not once. Every feeling has moved through it like wind through empty space, leaving the space itself completely unchanged. Let that understanding land somewhere deeper than thought. You are not the worried thoughts. You are the vast, stable awareness in which worried thoughts briefly appear and then dissolve. You are not the anxious feelings. You are the spacious presence that can hold anxious feelings without collapsing. You are not the uncertain future. You are the eternal now that never actually becomes the future, but simply continues being now, moment after moment after moment. Your breath knows this already. It doesn't worry about the next breath while taking this one. It simply breathes, trusting the fundamental process of life to continue. Your heart knows this. It beats steadily whether you're calm or anxious, never questioning whether it should keep going. The wisdom is already here, in your body, waiting for your mind to stop arguing with reality long enough to notice. Breathe in slowly, receiving this moment exactly as it is. Breathe out slowly, releasing the need for this moment to be different. Nothing to fix, nothing to solve, nothing to worry about right here, right now. Let your jaw unclench, of releasing tension you didn't know you were holding. Your tongue can rest softly in your mouth. Your eyes can soften behind closed lids. And as you remember what Ryokan never forgot, that peace is what you are, not what you achieve. Another journey unfolds, carrying you deeper into the same timeless truth. In 16th century Japan, during the turbulent age of warring states, there lived a Zen master named Takuan Soho. He was renowned not for his martial skill but for teaching swordsmen something more valuable than technique, the state of mind called Fudoshin, the immovable heart. Among those who sought his guidance was a young samurai named Yagyu Tajima, who would later become sword instructor to the shogun. But when Tajima first climbed the steps to Takuan's temple, he was 24 years old and terrified that he would die in his first real battle, without ever understanding what his teachers meant by the mind that does not move. Takuan received him in a simple room overlooking a garden. The master was older than Tajima expected, his face lined, but his eyes sharp and clear. He offered no tea, no pleasantries. He simply waited. "Master," Tajima began, struggling to find words. "I have trained with the sword for 15 years. My technique is excellent. But in my last sparring match, when my opponent attacked with killing intent, my mind froze. I saw his blade coming and I couldn't move. My teacher says I must develop Fudoshin, the immovable mind. But how can the mind that freezes be called immovable?" Takuan smiled slightly. "You have misunderstood what immovable means. The mind that froze when you saw the blade, that mind was very much moved. It was captured by fear, stuck on the image of the sword coming toward you. The truly immovable mind is paradoxically the one that moves freely, that flows like water, that doesn't stop anywhere." Tajima frowned. "I don't understand. How can something be immovable by moving?" "Watch," Takuan said. He picked up a bowl of water from beside him and tilted it slightly. The water inside shifted, perfectly reflecting the room from every angle as it moved. The water moves, yes, but its essential nature, its wetness, its ability to reflect, its fundamental quality, does these change? No. The water can be still or flowing, in a bowl or a river, frozen or boiling. But water remains water. So too with consciousness. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. Circumstances change constantly. But awareness itself, the consciousness that experiences all of these changes, that never moves from its essential nature, it is always stable, always present, always unmoved by what moves through it. Takuan set the bowl down carefully. Your mind froze because you placed it on the sword. You put your attention on the blade, and it stayed there, captured, An immovable mind doesn't place itself anywhere. It remains everywhere at once, aware of the opponent's sword. Yes, but also aware of his feet, his eyes, his breath, the space between you, your own body, everything. It doesn't fixate. It doesn't stop. And therefore, paradoxically, it cannot be moved. Over the following months, Tajima visited Takuan regularly. The master never taught him sword technique. Instead, he taught him to sit in meditation, to observe his own mind with the same attention he would give to an opponent. Notice, Takuan would say during these sessions, when a thought appears, your attention rushes to it. You grab it, elaborate on it, follow it into the past or future. The thought has captured your mind. This is the same mechanism that made you freeze when you saw the blade. You must learn to let thoughts arise without grabbing them. Let them pass without following them. Tajima found this practice excruciating at first. His mind wouldn't stay still. It jumped from thought to thought, like a monkey in trees worrying about upcoming battles, replaying past mistakes, planning future strategies. Each time Takuan rang the bell to end the meditation, Tajima felt he had failed. I can't do it, Master, Tajima confessed after one particularly frustrating session. My mind won't be still. It won't be immovable. Good, Takuan said, surprising him. You're beginning to see the truth. The mind is movement. Thoughts are movement. Trying to make the mind still is like trying to make water not be wet. You're fighting against nature. Then how can I develop Fudushin? Not by making the mind still, Takuan said, but by recognizing what is already still beneath the movement. The thoughts move. Yes. Emotions move. Sensations move. But the awareness that notices all of this, does it move? When a thought appears, the awareness is present. When the thought disappears, the awareness remains. When fear arises, awareness knows fear. When fear passes, awareness is still there. The awareness itself is the immovable mind. It has been with you all along, utterly stable, completely unaffected by any experience. Tajima wrestled with this teaching. He understood it intellectually, but couldn't seem to access it in the moment of pressure. During sparring matches, his mind still tended to fixate on his opponent's weapon, on his own fear, on the outcome he desired. Each fixation made him vulnerable. Then came the day everything shifted. Tajima was walking through the forest on the way to the temple when he was ambushed by 3 bandits. They demanded his sword and his money. Tajima had neither money nor any intention of surrendering his weapon. The bandits attacked. What happened next? Tajima could never fully explain. His body moved without thought. His sword flowed from one position to another without his conscious direction. He was aware of everything, all 3 opponents simultaneously, their positions, their intentions, the terrain, from his own movements, but his mind didn't stop on any single element. It was as if he was watching the fight unfold while simultaneously being the one fighting. Within moments, 2 bandits were disarmed and the 3rd had fled. Tajima stood in the forest clearing, his heart pounding, but his mind strangely quiet. He had been in mortal danger, yet during the fight itself, there had been no fear, no doubt, no inner commentary. Just pure, fluid response. He went immediately to find Takuan. The master listened to his breathless account, then nodded. Now you know, Takuan said simply, This is Fudoshin. Your body moved. Your sword moved. Thoughts appeared and disappeared. But something in you remained completely stable throughout. That stability wasn't something you created. It was simply what you are when you stop interfering with yourself. But how do I find that state again? Tajima asked. It happened spontaneously, but I don't know how to access it deliberately. That's the secret, Takuan said. You can't access it deliberately, because deliberate effort is itself a fixation, a place where the mind stops and becomes movable. Fudoshin reveals itself when you let go of trying to achieve Fudoshin. He stood and walked to the garden. Kome, let me show you something. In the garden was a large stone with Japanese characters carved into it. Do you know what this says? Tajima read, "The immovable wisdom king." Yes, Takuan said. In Buddhist teaching, this refers to a fierce protective deity. But it's not an external god. It's a symbol of the immovable mind. The Wisdom King is depicted as terrifying, surrounded by flames, holding weapons. He looks anything but peaceful. Yet he is called immovable. Why? Because his nature doesn't change regardless of what he encounters? Exactly. He faces demons and evil without his fundamental wisdom being disturbed. He engages fully with chaos while remaining inwardly stable. This is different from the peaceful Buddha who sits in meditation with eyes closed. The Wisdom King demonstrates that Fudoshin isn't about retreating from life's turbulence. It's about remaining centered within the turbulence. Takuan placed his hand on the stone. For a warrior, this is essential. You will face death. You will face opponents who want to kill you. You will experience fear, pain, exhaustion. If your peace depends on these conditions not being present, you'll never have peace. But if you discover the immovable awareness that can hold all conditions, including the condition of facing death, then you're truly free. In the years that followed, Tajima's reputation as a swordsman grew. He won duels, survived battles, eventually became one of the most respected martial artists in Japan. But he credited his success not to technique but to what Takuan had taught him. When he himself became a teacher later in life, Tajima would tell his students, "The sword technique I can teach you in months. The immovable mind takes a lifetime." But paradoxically, the immovable mind is already present, already stable, already complete. You're not trying to create it. You're simply removing the habits of mind that obscure it. One student, a talented but anxious young warrior named Musashi, asked him, "Master, how do I stop my mind from racing before a duel? I lie awake all night imagining different scenarios, different outcomes. By the time the duel arrives, I'm exhausted." Tajima recognized himself in the young man's struggle. Your mind races because you're placing it in the future. You're fighting imaginary duels against imaginary versions of your opponent. But the future duel doesn't exist. Only the present moment exists. And in this present moment, there is no opponent, no danger, no duel. There's only you, breathing, alive, complete. But I need to prepare. Yes. Visualize technique. Yes. But there's a difference between useful planning and useless worry. Planning says, tomorrow I will face an opponent. So today I will practice this technique, refine this strategy. Planning is clear and productive. Worry says, what if I fail? What if I die? What if I'm not good enough? Worry solves nothing. It just makes you suffer before the actual event. Tajima had the young man sit in meditation. Notice the thoughts about tomorrow's duel. See how they appear in your awareness like clouds in the sky. The clouds come and go, but the sky itself, the awareness holding all thoughts, does it come and go? Musashi sat quietly, then opened his eyes with wonder. The awareness is always here. Yes. Thoughts about the duel move. Fear moves. But the awareness of these things that doesn't move, that's your true stability, your true strength. If you can rest in that awareness, even for a moment, you'll find that the duel itself becomes less daunting, because you're no longer fighting alone. You're rooted in something vast and unshakable. Decades later, when Tajima was an old man, a visiting monk asked him to explain the deepest teaching he'd received from Master Takuan. Tajima was silent for a long time, sitting in the same garden where Takuan had taught him. Finally, he spoke. Master Takuan taught me that there is nowhere to stand outside the flow of life. Everything moves, thoughts, circumstances. Even our own body grows old and dies. But we exhaust ourselves trying to find solid ground, trying to make something permanent in a world of impermanence. The immovable mind isn't found by stopping the movement. It's found by recognizing what has never moved, the awareness itself, which was present before any experience arose and will be present after all experiences pass. And do you live in that awareness constantly now? The monk asked. Tajima laughed. No, I forget constantly. I get caught in thoughts, in preferences, in the small dramas of daily life. But I forget less often than I used to. And when I do forget, I remember more quickly. The immovable mind isn't a destination you reach and then stay at forever. It's a recognition you keep returning to, again and again, until the returning becomes effortless. He gestured to the stone with its inscription. The Wisdom King is immovable, not because nothing disturbs him, but because he doesn't resist disturbance. Demons appear. He faces them. Peace appears. He enjoys it. Neither moves him from his fundamental nature. This is true freedom, not freedom from difficulty, but freedom within difficulty. The monk bowed deeply, understanding. When Tajima died, years later, they said he passed while sitting upright in meditation, his face serene, his body completely relaxed. His last words were reported to be, "See, nothing to hold on to, nothing to fear. Just this moment, and then the next, and now no next." And he smiled, released his breath, and was still. Takuan's teaching of Fudoshin offers something immediately useful, the recognition that true stability comes not from controlling conditions, but from recognizing what remains unchanged, regardless of conditions. Right now, thoughts might be moving through your mind, worries about tomorrow, replays of today, random associations. Notice that the awareness observing these thoughts isn't disturbed by them. The screen isn't affected by the movie playing on it. The mirror isn't changed by what it reflects. This has profound implications for how you meet difficulty. When Tajima faced the bandits, his mind didn't stop on fear or on any single aspect of the situation. It remained fluid, responsive, present to everything at once. This is available in your life too, not just in dramatic moments, but in everyday challenges. When you're overwhelmed by multiple demands, does your awareness itself become overwhelmed? Or does it simply hold the experience of feeling overwhelmed while remaining fundamentally stable? The difference between productive planning and destructive worry is crucial here. Tajima's student learned that planning happens in the present moment and serves a clear purpose. Worry happens in imagined futures and serves no purpose except to create suffering. Feel this distinction right now. If you think tomorrow I need to handle that task, there's a clarity, a simplicity. If you think, what if I can't handle it? What if everything falls apart? There's a spinning, an endless elaboration. One is the immovable mind engaging with life. The other is the mind moved by phantoms. The Wisdom King symbol points to something people often misunderstand about Buddhist peace. It's not about being passive or gentle or withdrawn from life's intensity. It's about engaging fully with intensity while remaining inwardly centered. The warrior faces death with the same equanimity as the meditator faces sitting. Neither circumstance, battle, or meditation hall has the power to move the fundamental awareness from its natural stability. Think about Tajima's realization that he couldn't deliberately create Fudoshin. This is liberating once you understand it. You're not trying to manufacture a state that's absent. You're noticing a stability that's always present, but overlooked. It's like discovering you've been standing on solid ground all along, but were too focused on the apparent shakiness of everything else to notice. Your body already demonstrates this. Your heartbeat doesn't panic when you're anxious, it adjusts. Yes, responds to conditions. Yes, but it doesn't lose its fundamental rhythm. Your breath continues whether you're calm or agitated. There's a wisdom in these automatic processes that your thinking mind can learn from. They do what they do without second-guessing, without adding layers of concern about whether they're doing it right. When Takuan said the mind shouldn't place itself anywhere, he pointed to a common trap. We focus on our fear, and the mind gets stuck there. We focus on our desire for a certain outcome, and the mind gets stuck there. We focus on what we're doing wrong, and the mind gets stuck there. Each fixation is a place where we become vulnerable, where we lose our natural fluidity. The immovable mind is paradoxically free-flowing because it doesn't fixate on anything. It takes in everything without clinging to anything. Let this understanding settle into your body right now. Notice that even as you lie here, perhaps restless or uncomfortable or worried, the awareness that knows about the restlessness is perfectly at ease. The awareness that knows about discomfort isn't itself uncomfortable. The awareness that notices worry is not worried. This awareness is your true nature. It's what Takuan called immovable, not because it's frozen, but because its fundamental quality never changes regardless of what passes through it. You don't need to achieve this. You only need to notice it's already here, has always been here, will always be here, like the sky that remains vast and clear even when filled with storms. The awareness that you are remains stable even when filled with turbulent experiences. Let your breath find its own rhythm, effortless and natural. There's nothing to control, nothing to perfect. Just the simple rising and falling that has sustained you since your first moment. Feel your feet, heavy and warm, completely at rest. They've carried you through everything, and now they can simply be, without purpose, without direction. And as the warrior's teaching settles into stillness, another voice rises from the forests of Thailand, speaking the same truth through the lens of simplicity. In the forests of northeast Thailand, during the mid-20th century, there lived a meditation master named Ajahn Chah. His monastery was simple, a collection of wooden huts scattered among the trees, where monks practiced in silence, observing the ancient Theravada discipline. Ajahn Chah himself was known for teachings that were disarmingly direct, often using the simplest objects to point to the deepest truths. One rainy season, a young Western monk named Robert arrived at the monastery, carrying with him the weight of his entire life. Robert had been a successful lawyer in London before a profound dissatisfaction drove him to abandon everything and ordain as a Buddhist monk. He'd been practicing for 2 years, moving between different monasteries, searching for something he couldn't quite name, a peace that wouldn't evaporate the moment circumstances changed. Robert was assigned a small hut on the edge of the monastery grounds. He threw himself into practice with the same intensity he'd once applied to his legal career. He meditated for hours, studied the ancient texts, performed every duty with meticulous care. But the peace he sought remained elusive. His mind was still a battlefield, analyzing, judging, comparing his progress to other monks, worrying whether he was doing it right. After several weeks, Robert requested a private meeting with Ajahn Chah. They sat together on the porch of the teacher's hut, rain drumming on the roof, the forest exhaling its green scent. "Ajahn," Robert began in careful Thai, "I'm trying very hard to develop equanimity, but I still get disturbed by everything. Yesterday, someone criticized my meditation posture and I was upset for hours. This morning I felt proud because another monk praised my chanting. I swing between happiness and misery depending on external conditions. How do I become stable like you?" Ajahn Chah listened with a slight smile, his weathered face completely relaxed. When Robert finished, the teacher said nothing for a long moment. Then he stood up. "Come, walk with me." They walked through the forest despite the rain, Ajahn Chah moving slowly, pointing out things as they went, a termite mound, a particular tree, the way water gathered in certain places. Finally, they came to a large boulder at the edge of a clearing. "Do you see this boulder?" Ajahn Chah asked. "Yes, Ajahn." "Is it heavy?" "Very heavy. Probably several tons. And if I asked you to carry it back to the monastery, could you?" Robert almost laughed. "Of course not. It's impossible." "Ah," Ajahn Chah said. "But what if I told you that you must carry it? That your enlightenment depends on carrying this boulder? What if I said you're a failure if you can't lift it?" I suppose I would feel terrible. But the demand would be unreasonable. The boulder is too heavy for any human to lift. "Exactly," Ajahn Chah said, his eyes twinkling. "The boulder is heavy. Yes, but is the boulder suffering?" Robert looked at the boulder, confused. "No. The boulder is just being a boulder." "Right. The boulder is heavy. That is its nature. It doesn't struggle with being heavy. It doesn't wish it were lighter. It doesn't compare itself to smaller stones and feel ashamed. It simply is what it is. So where does suffering come from? From my wanting it to be different? From your wanting yourself to be different?" Ajahn Chah corrected gently. "You look at your mind restless, reactive, not yet peaceful, and you say, 'This shouldn't be this way. I should be further along. Other monks seem more peaceful. What's wrong with me?' This is like the boulder trying to be light. You're fighting against your own nature as it is right now." They stood in the rain, water dripping from the trees around them. Robert felt something shift in his chest. "But, Ajahn, shouldn't I try to improve? Isn't that why I'm here, to develop peace? To overcome reactivity? Development happens," Ajahn Chah said. "Like this forest grows without trying to grow. But you must understand something fundamental. Peace isn't a condition you achieve. Peace is recognizing that the changing conditions of mind, the restlessness, the reactivity, All of it. These are like weather passing through the sky. The sky itself is never disturbed by weather. You are the sky, not the weather. He placed his hand on the boulder. This boulder demonstrates perfect equanimity. Rain falls on it. Sun beats on it. People sit on it. Lichen grows on it. The boulder remains the boulder. It accepts everything without being changed by anything. This is your true nature too. But you keep identifying yourself with the weather. I am restless. I am reactive. I am failing, instead of recognizing yourself as the awareness that observes all of these changing states. Over the following months, Robert found himself returning to that boulder again and again. He would sit beside it during his walking meditation, studying it as if it were a teacher. And slowly, he began to understand what Ajahn Chah meant. The boulder didn't become more boulder-like through effort. It was simply what it was, completely at peace with its nature. When Robert judged his meditation as bad, the boulder remained. When he felt proud of a good meditation, the boulder remained. The boulder's stability wasn't dependent on conditions, it was its fundamental nature. But understanding this intellectually and living it were different things. Robert still found himself thrown off balance by small things, a difficult work assignment, a critical word from another monk, even his own physical discomfort during long meditation sessions. One afternoon, while Robert was struggling through particularly painful sitting meditation, Ajahn Chah walked past and paused. "Is it difficult?" the teacher asked. "Yes, Ajahn. My knee is killing me." "Good," Ajahn Chah said. "Now you can learn something important." "Is the pain heavy?" Robert almost said yes, then remembered the boulder. "The pain is just pain, but I'm making it heavy by fighting it, by wanting it to stop, by thinking about how much longer I can endure it." Ajahn Chah smiled broadly. "Yes, you're beginning to see. The pain is the pain that's like the boulder being heavy. You can't change that. But your relationship with the pain, your struggling with it, your story about it, that's optional. Suffering, that's you trying to lift the boulder instead of just letting it be heavy." He sat down beside Robert. "Let me tell you something. When I was a young monk, I was full of restlessness and doubt. I thought the point was to eliminate these states, to achieve some permanent peace where nothing ever disturbed me. So I tried very hard. I meditated for hours, practiced austerities, went without food or sleep, pushing my body to extremes. And the harder I tried, the more restless and doubtful I became." "What changed?" Robert asked. "I got exhausted," Ajahn Chah said with a laugh. "I simply ran out of energy for fighting. And in that exhaustion, something became clear. The restlessness was like a bird flying through the sky. The sky doesn't chase the bird or push it away. It simply allows the bird to pass through. I realized I could be like the sky, allowing whatever states of mind to arise and pass, without identifying with them, without needing them to be different." "But how do you do that?" Robert asked. "How do you just allow things without reacting?" "You don't do it," Ajahn Chah said. "This is the trick. Any doing is more fighting, more trying to lift the boulder. Instead, you recognize what's already allowing everything, the awareness itself. Right now, pain is present in your knee. Who knows about this pain? Some awareness. Yes, that awareness, does it hurt? Or does it simply know about hurt without being hurt itself?" Robert closed his eyes, paying attention. There was pain in his knee, sharp and demanding. But there was also an awareness observing the pain, noting its qualities. its intensity. And that awareness itself wasn't in pain. It was simply present, stable, untouched by what it observed. "I see it," Robert whispered. "The awareness isn't suffering. Only the body is uncomfortable, and the mind is reacting. But the awareness just watches." "This awareness," Ajahn Chah said, "this is your true nature. It's like the boulder, completely stable, unmoved by conditions. Pain comes, it observes pain. Pleasure comes, it observes pleasure. Praise, blame, success, failure, all of these are like weather passing through the sky. The awareness itself remains unchanged." In the years that followed, Robert's practice deepened, not because he became better at controlling his mind, but because he gradually learned to rest as awareness rather than identifying with the contents of awareness. He still experienced restlessness, doubt, physical pain, and all the other challenging states. But they no longer had the power to convince him that something was wrong, that he was failing, that he needed to be different. One day, Ajahn Chah asked Robert to help teach some newly arrived Western monks who were struggling with similar issues. Robert felt uncertain. He didn't feel qualified, didn't feel he'd achieved any special attainment. But Ajahn Chah insisted. Robert found himself sitting with 3 young monks, all of them clearly suffering in different ways. One was depressed, one was anxious, one was angry about conditions at the monastery. Robert listened to them, recognizing his own past struggles in their words. Finally, he said, "Come with me. I want to show you something." He took them to the boulder. It sat there as it always had, massive and unmoved, moss growing on its northern face, the marks of weather visible in its surface. This boulder was here before this monastery existed. Robert said, "It will be here long after we're gone. Monsoons have flooded around it. Droughts have baked it in the sun. Animals have used it for shelter. Monks have sat on it for meditation. And through all of this, the boulder has never once complained, never once wished to be different, never once doubted whether it's doing boulder correctly." The monks looked at him, waiting. "Your mind right now is experiencing certain states, depression, anxiety, anger. These states are like weather. They're real, they're present, and you can't just wish them away. They're heavy, like this boulder is heavy. But here's the question. Must you suffer about them? Must you add a second layer of struggle? I shouldn't be depressed. I'm a bad monk. I'm failing at practice on top of the depression itself?" The depressed monk spoke quietly. "But it feels unbearable." "Does it?" Robert asked gently. "Or is it simply unpleasant? There's a difference. Unpleasant is the actual experience, sadness, heaviness, lack of energy. Unbearable is the story we tell about the experience. I can't stand this. It will never end. Something is terribly wrong. The first is just weather. The second is us fighting the weather and exhausting ourselves." He sat down on the boulder, gesturing for them to join him. "Ajahn Chah taught me that equanimity isn't about making difficult states disappear. It's about recognizing that you are larger than any state. You are the awareness that can hold depression without being depressed, can hold anxiety without being anxious, can hold anger without being angry. Just as this boulder can hold moss without becoming moss, can be marked by weather without becoming weather." The anxious monk asked, "But how do I access that awareness when I'm overwhelmed?" "You don't access it," Robert said. It's always already here. Right now. You're aware of feeling anxious. Yes, some part of you knows anxiety is present. That knowing, that's the awareness. It's not anxious. It's simply observing anxiety. The practice is learning to rest as that observing awareness, rather than identifying completely with the observed anxiety. They sat together on the boulder, in silence, while the forest hummed with life around them. Robert noticed his own mind still moved through various states, a moment of doubt about whether he was teaching well, a moment of satisfaction, a moment of distraction. But underneath all of it, something remained stable. Not because he was controlling anything, but because he was beginning to trust his own nature as awareness, spacious, accepting, fundamentally at peace. Years later, when Robert eventually returned to the West to teach, people often asked him about the most important thing he learned from Ajahn Chah. He would smile and tell them about the boulder. Ajahn Chah used the simplest things to point to the deepest truths. Robert would say, "A boulder isn't enlightened. It's not wise. It hasn't achieved anything. But it demonstrates perfectly what we spend our whole lives looking for: the complete acceptance of what is, the absence of struggle with one's own nature, the stability that comes not from controlling conditions, but from being at peace with conditions as they are." "And did you achieve that?" someone would invariably ask. Robert would laugh. "I'm not sure I achieved anything, but I stopped fighting, and in the stopping, I found what had been there all along, a fundamental okayness with whatever arises. The boulder didn't teach me to be stable. It showed me that I already was stable. Underneath all the struggle and striving, the weather changes, but the sky doesn't. The states of mind change, but awareness doesn't. Once you really see that, not just intellectually, but viscerally, everything shifts. Not because your circumstances become perfect, but because you stop demanding that they be perfect in order for you to be at peace." Ajahn Chah's teaching about the boulder cuts through so much spiritual confusion. We think peace is a state we must achieve through effort, when actually peace is the recognition that we're already the unchanging awareness that holds all states. Right now, perhaps your mind is moving through various thoughts and feelings. Maybe there's restlessness or discomfort or worry. Can you notice that something in you is aware of all this movement? That awareness itself, is it restless, or is it simply observing restlessness with complete stability? The boulder is heavy. This is its nature. It doesn't struggle with being heavy. Your life has certain conditions right now, some pleasant, some unpleasant. These are your current weather. The suffering comes not from the conditions themselves, but from fighting them, from adding the story that they shouldn't be this way, from demanding that reality be different before you allow yourself peace. The suffering comes not from the conditions themselves, but from fighting them. Think about Robert's realization during painful meditation. The physical pain was real, the knee hurt, but the suffering included so much more than the pain. It included the aversion to pain, the worry about whether he could endure it, the judgment that he was failing because he found it difficult, the comparison to monks who seemed more comfortable. Strip all that away, and what remains? Just sensation. Unpleasant sensation. Yes, but bearable, workable, temporary. This applies to every difficult experience in your life. The actual experience, the disappointment, the fear, the uncertainty is like the boulder being heavy. It is what it is. You can't think it away or deny it away. But the secondary suffering, the story about what the experience means, the catastrophizing about the future, the self-judgment about having the experience, all of that is optional. All of that is you trying to lift the boulder instead of allowing it to be heavy. Ajahn Chah's question is profound. Does the boulder suffer? The boulder experiences everything: rain, sun, heat, cold, but it doesn't create suffering about these experiences. It doesn't have a concept of how things should be different. It simply is what it is, accepting its nature and its circumstances completely. This isn't resignation or passivity. It's a profound wisdom about working with reality as it is, rather than exhausting yourself fighting reality. Notice right now, you're lying down, presumably safe, in a space where you can rest. These are the actual conditions. But how much mental energy goes into conditions that aren't actually present? Tomorrow's problems, last week's mistakes, hypothetical disasters. The mind creates layer upon layer of abstract worry until you're no longer experiencing this moment at all. You're lost in a mental storm about non-existent moments. The awareness that Ajahn Chah pointed to, the consciousness that knows about all experiences without being defined by any experience, this is your true stability. It's not something you achieve through years of practice. It's what you are right now, what you've always been, what you'll always be. Practice doesn't create this awareness. Practice just helps you recognize it, trust it, rest in it more and more often. Your body knows this already. Your lungs don't worry about whether they're breathing correctly. They just breathe, responding to conditions, completely at peace with their function. Your heart doesn't judge itself for beating fast when you're nervous or slow when you're calm. It simply does what it does, stable in its responsiveness. This is the wisdom of your own organism functioning perfectly without needing a concept of perfection, responding to conditions without suffering about conditions. Let this understanding settle deeper than thought. You are not the restless mind. You are the awareness observing the restless mind. You are not the uncomfortable body. You are the awareness feeling the uncomfortable body. You are not your changing circumstances. You are the unchanging consciousness in which all circumstances appear and disappear. Like the sky holding all weather, like the boulder accepting all conditions. You are the stable ground that has never been disturbed, even for a moment. Breathe deeply into your belly, feeling it rise and fall like gentle waves. The breath doesn't struggle. It doesn't doubt itself. It simply continues, moment after moment, completely trustworthy. Let your hips soften, releasing into the surface beneath you. Gravity holds you. You don't have to hold yourself. You can simply allow yourself to be held, and as the forest teacher's wisdom roots you in your own unshakable nature. Another story emerges from the high mountains of Tibet, where the sky meets the earth and the wind teaches letting go. In the high mountains of eastern Tibet, in the early 19th century, there lived a yogini named Karma Yeshe. She had spent 20 years in solitary retreat in a cave halfway up a cliff face, accessible only by a narrow path that disappeared in winter snows. The villagers in the valley below knew of her, though few had seen her. Occasionally, a devoted practitioner would make the difficult climb to receive teachings, and these encounters became the stuff of legend. Karma Yeshe had not always been a solitary practitioner. In her youth, she had been married, mother to 3 children, wife to a merchant who traveled frequently between Tibet and Nepal. Her life had been full: the management of household affairs, the raising of children, the social obligations of a merchant's family. She had been competent, organized, beloved by her community. Then, in a single month, everything shattered. Her husband's caravan was lost in a mountain storm. All the goods, all the men, gone. 2 of her children contracted an illness that swept through the village. Despite her desperate prayers and the ministrations of healers, both died within days of each other. Her remaining child, a daughter, survived but was left profoundly weak. Karma Yeshe had stood in the ruins of her life, feeling as if the ground itself had dissolved beneath her feet. Everything she'd built her identity upon, wife, mother, member of a prosperous family, all of it gone. She was 32 years old and felt ancient, hollowed out, barely a person at all. In her desperation, she sought out a lama who was visiting from a distant monastery. She found him in a small shrine room, and without preamble, fell at his feet. "Lama La, I have lost everything," she said, her voice breaking. "My husband, my children, my security, my purpose. I feel like I'm falling through endless space with nothing to hold on to. How do I bear this? How do I continue living when everything that made life meaningful has been taken?" The Lama, an old man with eyes that seemed to see through surfaces, was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, "When you say you're falling through endless space, what is this space made of?" The question confused her. "It's nothing. Emptiness. The absence of everything I had." "Look more carefully," the Lama said. "This space you're falling through, can you touch it? No. Can you see its edges? No. Can it be destroyed or damaged? I don't know what you mean." The Lama stood and walked to the window, gesturing at the vast sky beyond. "Look at the sky. Can you touch it? Can you find its edges? Can it be damaged?" Karma Yeshe looked. The sky stretched endlessly in all directions, holding clouds, holding the flight of birds, holding the distant peaks of mountains. The sky cannot be touched, cannot be bounded, cannot be harmed, the Lama said, and yet it holds everything. Storms pass through it. Does the storm damage the sky? Rain falls from it. Does the sky become less? Birds fly through it. Does the sky become full and unable to hold more? No, Karma Yeshe whispered. "This space you're falling through," the Lama said gently, "this is not absence. This is your true nature revealing itself. You have always been like the sky, vast, spacious, able to hold everything. But you thought you were the things in the sky. You thought you were the clouds of being a wife, a mother, a respected woman. When those clouds dissolved, you thought you had disappeared. But you haven't disappeared. The clouds have simply revealed the sky that was always there." Karma Yeshe felt something crack open in her chest. "But the pain is real," the Lama said. "It's weather passing through the sky. Grief is weather. Loss is weather. All of it is real. All of it is present. But the sky that holds the grief that cannot be destroyed by what it holds, you are that sky. You have always been that sky. The clouds made you forget this, but the clouds were never who you are." The Lama gave her instruction in meditation practices, particularly the practice of recognizing the nature of mind, what the Tibetan tradition calls Rigpa, the unchanging awareness that witnesses all experience without being altered by any experience. He told her that if she wished to truly understand this teaching, she would need to practice with complete dedication. Karma Yeshe arranged for her surviving daughter to be cared for by relatives, distributed what little property remained, and went into retreat. At first, she could barely sit still. Her mind was a storm of grief, rage, despair, guilt. She would sit in meditation and within minutes be overwhelmed by emotions so intense she felt they would consume her. But she kept returning to the Lama's teaching. When grief arose like a monsoon, she would ask herself, what is the space in which this grief appears? When rage came like lightning, she would notice, what witnesses this rage without being burned by it? When despair settled like heavy clouds, she would inquire, what remains clear even when the view is obscured? Slowly, over months and years, something began to shift. She started to recognize that emotions, no matter how intense, were like weather systems passing through vast space. They had a beginning, a peak, an end. They moved through her awareness, but the awareness itself remained stable throughout. She could be in the middle of the most intense grief, and something in her would notice. Grief is present. Awareness of grief is present, but awareness itself is not grieving. This didn't make the grief disappear. It didn't make her stop missing her husband and children, but it changed her relationship with the grief. She learned to let it move through her without resistance, the way the sky allows storms to pass without trying to push them away or hold them in place. After 5 years in retreat, something profound occurred. Karma Yeshe was sitting in meditation during a particularly violent storm. Thunder shook the cliff walls. Rain hammered against her cave entrance. Wind screamed through the mountain passes. And in the middle of this chaos, she had a moment of absolute clarity. She saw that the storm and the sky were not separate. The sky wasn't damaged by the storm because the storm was made of the same space as the sky. The turbulence, the electricity, to the water, all of it was just the sky manifesting in different forms. And in that moment, she understood. Her grief, her loss, her pain, all of it was manifestation of the same awareness that witnessed it. There was no real separation between experience and the experiencer. It was all one seamless reality, one vast space appearing as both stability and turbulence. The distinction that remained was this: she could identify with the turbulence. I am my grief. I am my loss. I am my pain. Or she could recognize herself as the space holding it all. Grief is here. Loss is here. Pain is here. And I am the awareness in which they all appear. The first made suffering personal and permanent. The second allowed suffering to be real but not defining, present but not unchanging. After 20 years of retreat, at the age of 52, Karma Yeshe emerged. Not because she'd achieved some final attainment, but because she felt called to share what she'd discovered. She didn't return to the village, too many memories there. Instead, she found a cave higher in the mountains and made it available to those who sought her out. One summer, a young woman named Sering made the difficult climb. She was 25, recently widowed, 3 months pregnant. The father of her child had died in an accident during a festival, and Sering was consumed by fear of raising a child alone, fear of the judgment of others, fear of the future stretching before her with no certainty. Karma Yeshe listened as Sering poured out her terror, and saw herself 30 years earlier, the same desperate grasping for stability. The same sense that life had become unbearable. Tell me, Karma Yeshe said when Sering finished, this fear you feel, where is it located? Sering touched her chest. Here, like a heavy stone. And before you felt this fear today, where was it? I don't know. It wasn't there. And when you're asleep, deeply asleep with no dreams, where is it then? Nowhere. So fear comes and goes, Karma Yeshi said. It arises from nothing, exists for a while, and dissolves back into nothing, like a cloud forming in the sky. Does the sky need the cloud to be a certain shape? Does the sky reject storm clouds and accept only pleasant clouds? No, Tsering said. The sky holds all clouds. Just so, Karma Yeshi said. Your awareness is like the sky. Right now, it holds fear. Sometimes it holds joy. Sometimes it holds grief, or anger, or peace, or confusion. But the awareness itself, the vast space of consciousness that can hold all of these experiences that never changes, that is your true stability. Tsering's brow furrowed. But the fear feels so solid, so real. It doesn't feel like a passing cloud. It feels like the truth of my situation. The fear is real. Karma Yeshi agreed. I'm not telling you to pretend it isn't there, or that your situation isn't difficult. Your husband is dead. You're pregnant and alone. These are facts, and they're hard facts. But notice the difference between these facts and the story your mind tells about them. She picked up a piece of charcoal and drew on a flat stone. Here is your situation, widowed. Pregnant. Uncertain future. This is like the weather. Now here she drew a spiral around and around the first mark. Is your mind's story. I can't do this. I'll fail. Everyone will judge me. My child will suffer. I'm not strong enough. This shouldn't have happened. Why me? All of this extra elaboration. This is optional suffering. This is the mind fighting the weather instead of simply experiencing the weather. Tsering stared at the drawing, tears running down her face. But how do I stop the mind from doing this? The thoughts just come. You don't stop them, Karma Yeshi said gently. The sky doesn't try to stop clouds from forming. Thoughts arise, this is natural. Fear arises, this is natural given your circumstances. But you have a choice about what you do next. You can believe the thoughts completely, can identify with them, can treat them as absolute truth, or you can recognize them as weather passing through the vast space of your awareness. She placed her hand on Tsering's arm. Let me teach you something practical. Right now, bring your attention to this moment. Not to the imagined future where you're struggling to raise your child alone. Not to the past where your husband was alive. Just this moment. Right here. Right now. In this exact moment. Are you okay? Tsering closed her eyes. Checking. Yes. In this moment. I'm sitting here. I'm breathing. Nothing terrible is actually happening right now. Exactly. Most of our suffering is about times that aren't actually present. We suffer about past events we can't change, or future events that haven't happened and may never happen. Meanwhile, this moment, the only moment that actually exists, often this moment is bearable. Sometimes it's even peaceful. Over the following months, Tsering returned to the cave regularly. Karma Yeshi taught her meditation practices, ways of working with difficult emotions, methods for recognizing the spacious awareness beneath all experience. Most importantly, she taught Tsering what she herself had learned, that stability doesn't come from having perfect circumstances, but from recognizing the unchanging awareness that can hold any circumstance. The day Tsering gave birth, she labored in tremendous pain, and in the middle of a contraction, she suddenly remembered Karma Yeshi's teaching. The pain was like a storm, intense, overwhelming, seemingly unbearable. But something in her stood back from it. watching it, and that something was completely at peace. The pain continued. The watching continued. Neither interfered with the other. When her daughter was born, healthy and screaming, Tsering wept with joy and relief and exhaustion. And underneath all of those feelings, she could sense something stable, something that had held joy and pain with equal embrace, the sky-like nature of her own awareness. Years later, when Karma Yeshe was very old, a monk from a distant monastery made the climb to ask her a question that had troubled him for years. "Mother," he said, using the honorific title, "you've experienced terrible loss. You've spent decades in solitary practice. You've presumably reached high levels of realization. So tell me, do you still feel sadness? Do you still experience difficult emotions?" Karma Yeshe laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Of course. Just last week I wept, remembering my children. Sometimes I feel loneliness. Sometimes I experience physical pain from this old body. The weather hasn't stopped coming." "Then what's the difference?" the monk asked. Frustrated. "If you still experience everything we ordinary people experience, what was the point of all that practice?" "The difference," Karma Yeshe said, "is that I no longer believe the weather is who I am. Sadness comes. I recognize it as sadness. Feel it fully. Let it move through. But I don't think I am a sad person, or I shouldn't be feeling this, or this will last forever. The sadness is weather in the vast sky of awareness. And that sky, my true nature, has never been damaged by any weather." She gestured to the open expanse beyond the cave entrance. "Look at the sky. Ooh, right now it's clear and blue. Tomorrow it might be filled with storm clouds. Next week it might be covered with mist. Does any of this change what the sky is? The sky is always the sky, vast, spacious, capable of holding everything. You are always you, the unchanging awareness capable of holding every experience. This recognition is freedom." The monk sat with this teaching, and something in him began to open. "So I don't need to become someone different?" he asked quietly. "I don't need to achieve some special state where nothing ever disturbs me. You are already what you're seeking," Karma Yeshe said. "You are already the unchanging sky. The practice is simply remembering this, again and again, until the remembering becomes effortless. Until you can be in the middle of the storm and simultaneously know yourself as the space that holds the storm. Until you can grieve without being lost in grief. Feel fear without being controlled by fear. Experience joy without clinging to joy." She smiled. "This is unshakable peace, not the absence of difficulty, but the recognition that no difficulty can destroy your fundamental nature." Karma Yeshe's journey from devastating loss to profound stability demonstrates something essential, that the worst circumstances can reveal the deepest truth. When everything you've built your identity around dissolves, what remains? The temptation is to believe nothing remains, that you've been destroyed. But actually, what's revealed is what was always there, the vast, unbreakable awareness that witnesses everything without being diminished by anything. The image of the sky is so useful because it's something you can actually observe. Look at the sky during different conditions: clear blue, storm clouds, sunset colors, night, darkness. The conditions change completely, but the sky itself remains the same, spacious openness. It doesn't fight any condition. It doesn't prefer sunshine over rain. It simply holds everything with perfect equanimity. Your awareness is the same way. Your awareness is the same way. Right now, notice what's in your awareness. Maybe there are worried thoughts about tomorrow. Maybe there's physical discomfort. Maybe there's exhaustion or restlessness or any number of experiences. All of these are like weather patterns, real, present, affecting the view. But the awareness itself that knows about all of this, is it worried? Is it uncomfortable? Is it tired? Or is it simply present? Stable, witnessing everything without being changed by anything? The distinction Karma Yeshe made between facts and stories is crucial. The facts are what actually is. You're in this situation, facing these circumstances, experiencing these sensations. The stories are the elaborate meaning-making your mind does what it all means about you, what it predicts about the future, how it compares to other possibilities. The facts you must work with. The stories are optional, and they're usually the source of most suffering. Think about how Tsering discovered during childbirth that she could be in intense pain and simultaneously have something in her completely at peace. This isn't dissociation or denial. It's the recognition that pain is an experience arising in awareness. But awareness itself isn't in pain. The pain is weather. The awareness is sky. Both are real. Both are present. But only one is your fundamental nature. This has profound implications for how you meet any difficulty. When you're facing something hard and you identify completely with the difficulty, I am my anxiety, I am my failure, I am my loss, you collapse into the weather and forget the sky. The difficulty becomes your entire reality. But when you remember, difficulty is here, and I am the awareness holding the difficulty, suddenly there's space. There's perspective. The difficulty is still real, but it's no longer total. Karma Yeshe didn't stop feeling sadness after 20 years of practice. She still wept for her lost children, but she wept as the sky weeps, the rain falls. The tears come, and the sky remains the sky. She didn't resist the sadness, or judge herself for feeling it, or believe it meant something was wrong with her practice. She simply allowed it to be there, felt it fully, and knew herself as the space large enough to hold even that grief without being destroyed. Your body demonstrates this constantly. Your lungs hold air, release air, to hold air again completely at ease with the constant change. Your skin holds warmth and cold with equal readiness. Your ears hold both pleasant sounds and harsh sounds without discrimination. This is the wisdom of the body, to be present to all experiences without demanding that experiences be a certain way. Let that wisdom inform your mind right now. You don't need to get rid of difficult thoughts or feelings. You just need to recognize that you are the space in which they appear, not the thoughts and feelings themselves. Like the sky holding a storm, you are vast enough to hold any internal weather without being harmed by it. Feel the relief in this understanding. You don't have to fix yourself or perfect yourself or achieve some special state. You simply need to recognize what's already true, that you are already the unshakable awareness, already the vast space, already complete and whole, regardless of what experiences are moving through you. Let your breathing soften even further, becoming so subtle you barely notice it. The breath continues without your management, without your worry, simply following its ancient pattern. Feel your whole body now, from head to toe, held in this moment like the earth is held in space effortlessly, completely, without any possibility of falling. And as the sky-like teaching settles into your bones, one final story emerges, dissolving even the need to understand, inviting you simply to rest. In the mountains of Vietnam, in the late 13th century, there lived a king who became a monk. His name was Tran Nan Tong, and his story was one that people still told centuries later, not because of his royal status, But because of how completely he let that status go, Tran Nan Tong had inherited the throne at age 21, during a time when the Mongol armies were sweeping across Asia, conquering everything in their path. 3 times the Mongols invaded Vietnam. 3 times the young king led his people in resistance, living in the forests and marshes with his soldiers, enduring the same hardships, eating the same meager rations. Against impossible odds, Vietnam held, but victory brought no peace to Tran Nan Tong's heart. He had seen too much death, too much suffering. He had made decisions that saved thousands and killed thousands. The weight of it sat on him like a mountain, and no amount of royal comfort could ease it. At age 35, after ensuring his son was ready to rule, Tran Nan Tong abdicated the throne. He shaved his head, put on the simple robes of a Buddhist monk, and walked away from everything he had known. The court was scandalized. The people were bewildered. How could their victorious king simply walk away? Tran Nan Tong said nothing in response to the questions and criticisms. He simply walked into the mountains and began the work of learning to sit still. For the first year, sitting still was torture. His mind raced with thoughts of the kingdom, with worry about whether his son was managing well, with guilt over the deaths he'd caused, with pride over the victories he'd won. Every time he sat down to meditate, it was as if the entire war played out again in his mind. He studied with various masters, moving between monasteries, seeking someone who could help him find the peace that eluded him. But each teacher seemed to offer variations on the same theme: observe the mind, let go of thoughts, cultivate concentration. He tried. He observed. He let go as best he could. But the fundamental disturbance remained. Then he heard about a Chinese Chan master named Tien Ung who had recently arrived in Vietnam. Tien Ung was old, reportedly over 80, and had a reputation for unconventional teaching methods. Tran Nan Tong sought him out. He found the old master living in a small hut on the side of Mount Yentu, the highest peak in the region. Tien Ung was sitting outside when Tran Nan Tong arrived, watching the rain fall on the mountain slopes. Tran Nan Tong bowed deeply. "Master, I was once a king. Now I am a monk. But I find no peace. The weight of my past actions, the memories of war, the responsibility I carried, all of it follows me. How do I let go? How do I find the stability I seek?" Tien Ung continued watching the rain for a long moment. Then he asked, "Do you see the mountain?" Tran Nan Tong looked. The mountain rose massive and solid, its slopes covered in forest, its peak often hidden in clouds. "Yes, Master." "And do you see the rain?" "Yes. The rain falls on the mountain. Thousands of drops, millions of drops, falling and falling. Tell me, does the mountain try to avoid the rain?" "No." "Master, does the mountain complain about the rain?" "No." "Does the mountain wish the rain would stop so it can finally be at peace?" "No." "Master, then why do you?" Tien Ung turned to look at him directly, his old eyes penetrating. "Your past is rain. Your memories are rain. Your guilt, your pride, your victories, your failures, all rain. But you treat them as if they're something the mountain must avoid or push away or fix before it can be the mountain. The mountain doesn't wait for perfect weather to be at peace. The mountain is at peace in all weather." Tran Nan Tong felt something crack inside his chest. "But Master, I've killed people. I've made decisions that led to death and suffering. How can I be at peace with that?" Who's asking you to be at peace with it? Tian Ung asked sharply. I'm not telling you to approve of killing. I'm not telling you to feel good about difficult decisions. I'm pointing to something much simpler. The rain falls. The mountain doesn't fight the rain. The rain falls, and falls, and falls, and eventually stops. Then sun comes. Then more rain. The mountain remains the mountain through all of it. He gestured for Tran Nan Tong to sit beside him. You were a king. Now you're a monk. But underneath both roles, what were you? What are you now? What will you be tomorrow? I don't know. Exactly. You don't know, because the you that you think you are is just another role. Another identity constructed from thoughts and memories and stories. The real you, your true nature, is like this mountain. It was here before you were born king. It's here now that you're a monk. It will be here after this body dies. And it has never been disturbed by any role, any identity, any experience. Tran Nan Tong sat in the rain beside the old master, letting the water soak his robes, feeling the cold against his skin. Something in Tian Ung's words resonated at a level deeper than understanding. Master, he said quietly, how do I access this mountain nature? You can't access what you already are. Tian Ung said, but you can stop pretending to be what you're not. You can stop identifying yourself as the former king who carries guilt, or the monk seeking peace, or any other story. These are just rain falling. Let them fall. Don't pick them up and carry them. Just let them fall. Over the next 3 years, Tran Nan Tong stayed near Tian Ung, practicing and studying. The old master's teaching was consistent. Whatever arises, let it be like rain on the mountain. Guilt arises, let it fall like rain. Pride arises, let it fall like rain. Peace arises, let it fall like rain. Don't grasp anything. Don't push anything away. Don't identify with any passing state as if it defines you. Slowly, Tran Nan Tong began to understand not with his mind but with his whole being. He noticed that memories of the war would arise, and if he didn't grab onto them and elaborate them into full stories, they would simply pass through his awareness like clouds. The memory itself wasn't the problem. The problem was his relationship with the memory, treating it as something that needed to be resolved, fixed, atoned for, or escaped from. He began to see that the weight he'd been carrying wasn't actually from his past actions. It was from his present relationship with past actions. The past itself was gone, finished, complete. Only the present moment existed. And in the present moment, he was simply sitting, breathing, being. The guilt was a story about the past, not the past itself. The pride was a story. The identity as former king was a story. Even monk seeking enlightenment was a story. Beneath all the stories, something remained constant, the simple awareness that knew about the stories without being defined by them. This awareness had been present when he was king. It was present now that he was a monk. It had been present during the horrors of war and during moments of peace. It was like the mountain, always there, always stable, allowing all weather to pass through without being changed. One day during the rainy season, Tran Nan Tong was sitting in meditation when a profound shift occurred. Rain was drumming on the roof of the meditation hall, and he was aware of his body sitting, of thoughts arising and passing, of the sound of rain, of the coolness in the air. And suddenly he saw clearly there was no separation between awareness and what it was aware of. The rain and the mountain were not two separate things. The awareness and the experiences arising in awareness were not two separate things. It was all one seamless process, one undivided reality. The him that he'd spent years trying to fix or purify or bring to peace, that was just a construction, a story, a pattern of thoughts held together by repetition and belief. In reality, there was no solid, separate self to have peace or not have peace. There was just this awareness, experience, arising and passing, completely natural, completely effortless, completely at peace, because peace wasn't a state to be achieved, but the nature of reality itself. When he opened his eyes, tears were streaming down his face, not from sadness or even from joy, but from the sheer relief of finally letting go of a burden he'd never actually needed to carry. He went to find Tin Ung, who was sweeping leaves from the courtyard in the rain. "Master," Tran Han Tong said, his voice thick with emotion. "I understand now. There was never anything to fix. The mountain was always at peace. I was just so busy being disturbed about being disturbed that I couldn't see it." Tin Ung smiled, continuing to sweep. "And now, the rain still falls. The memories still arise. But I'm not fighting with them anymore. I'm not waiting for them to stop before I can be at peace. They're just weather. And the mountain." He paused, struggling to put it into words. "The mountain has always been here. I am the mountain. I've always been the mountain. I just forgot. Don't get attached to that realization." Tin Ung said, still sweeping, "Tomorrow you might forget again. The mind might grab onto being someone who had a realization and make that into another identity to carry around. Just keep returning to the simplicity. Rain falls. Mountain remains. Over and over. Nothing special." Tran Nan Tong bowed deeply, understanding. He spent the rest of his life on Mount Yen too, establishing a monastery there, teaching others. People came from across Vietnam to study with the monk who had been king, and they found him to be utterly ordinary. He worked in the garden, cooked meals, repaired buildings. He didn't speak often about his royal past or his enlightenment experiences. He simply demonstrated, through his presence, what it meant to be like the mountain. One day, a young monk approached him with a question that had been troubling him for months. "Patriarch," the young monk said, for by this time, Tran Nan Tong had been recognized as a patriarch of the Vietnamese Zen tradition. "I understand that I should be like the mountain, accepting all experiences without being moved. But when difficult emotions arise, anger, fear, sadness, I judge myself for having them. I think I shouldn't feel this way. I'm supposed to be equanimous. How do I work with this?" Tran Han Tong smiled. "Even the judging is rain. You have anger that's rain. Then you have judgment about the anger that's more rain. Then you have frustration about the judging that's even more rain. The mountain doesn't say this rain is acceptable, but that rain is not. The mountain receives all rain equally. But doesn't Buddhism teach us to cultivate positive emotions and reduce negative ones?" "It does." Tran Han Tong agreed. "But there's a difference between cultivation and warfare. Cultivation means creating conditions for wholesome states to arise naturally through ethical conduct, meditation, wisdom. This is like preparing good soil for plants to grow. Warfare means attacking your own experience, fighting with what's already present, treating your own mind as an enemy to be conquered. This just creates more suffering." He gestured to the mountain around them. When winter comes, does the mountain fight against it, trying to make it be summer? No. The mountain allows winter to be winter. And in the allowing, winter passes naturally and summer comes in its time. When anger arises, can you allow it to be anger without adding judgment, without making it mean something about you, without needing to fix it immediately? Can you experience the actual sensation of anger, the heat, the tightness, the energy without all the extra story? The young monk tried this. He called to mind a recent incident that had angered him and felt the anger arise in his body. Usually, he would immediately layer on thoughts. I shouldn't be angry. I'm a monk. This is bad. I need to calm down. But this time, he just felt the anger itself. The sensation in his belly, the tension in his jaw, the heat in his chest. And he noticed that without the story, the anger was just energy. Intense energy. Yes, but not inherently bad. Just weather. It's passing, the young monk said with wonder. Without the story fueling it, it's already starting to pass. Yes, Tran Huntong said. This is the secret. Emotions are like rain, they come. They last as long as they last. They go. But we hold on to them with our thoughts, our stories, our judgments. We take a brief rainstorm and turn it into a month-long flood by constantly recirculating the water. The mountain doesn't do this. The mountain lets the rain fall and flow away naturally. Years later, when Tran Nan Tong was very old and knew his death was approaching, his students gathered around him, hoping for some final profound teaching. He looked at them with kind eyes and said simply, I was a king who became a monk, but I was never actually either of those things. I was always just this awareness appearing as various forms, playing various roles, experiencing various states, but never actually bound by any of it. The mountain remains the mountain, whether people call it a mountain or a hill or a pile of rocks. What you are remains what you are, regardless of what role you play or what experiences pass through you. He paused, breathing slowly. Don't make practice complicated. Rain falls, mountain remains. That's the whole teaching. Everything else is elaboration. He closed his eyes then, and his breathing gradually slowed and stopped. They said his face held a slight smile, and his body remained upright in meditation posture. And on the mountain around them, rain began to fall gentle, steady, soaking into the earth, while the mountain stood unmoved, at peace in the very nature of things. Tran Nan Tong's journey from king to monk to mountain shows us that peace isn't found by changing our external circumstances or even by processing our past completely. Peace is found by recognizing our fundamental nature, the unchanging awareness that witnesses all circumstances, all experiences, all roles, without being defined by any of them. The mountain doesn't wait for perfect weather to be at peace. The mountain is at peace in all weather. This teaching directly addresses one of the most persistent obstacles to equanimity, the belief that we shouldn't feel what we feel. Notice how the young monk was disturbed, not just by anger, but by his judgment about having anger. This creates layers of suffering, the primary emotion, then judgment about the emotion, then frustration about the judging, on and on. But all of these layers are just more rain. The mountain receives all rain equally. Right now, you might be experiencing something difficult: physical discomfort, mental restlessness, emotional turbulence. Notice if there's a voice saying, "This shouldn't be here. I need to fix this. Something's wrong." that voice is creating a second layer of difficulty. The sensation or emotion itself is just rain. It arises naturally, follows its course, passes away. But the judgment about it, the story about what it means, the demand that it be different, that's optional suffering. That's you fighting the weather instead of being the mountain. Think about Tran Nhan Tong's past as a king and warrior. He carried genuine responsibility for deaths, for difficult decisions, for suffering he couldn't prevent. These weren't small matters. And yet, his liberation came not from resolving the past or making it okay, but from recognizing that the past exists only as present moment thoughts and feelings. The actual events are complete, finished, gone. What remains is the story about those events, and stories are optional. Stories are rain. This doesn't mean moral nihilism or avoiding responsibility. Tran Nhan Tong didn't stop caring about ethics or right action, but he stopped carrying the weight of the past as if it were a solid thing that defined him. He learned to let memory arise like rain, feel it, acknowledge it, let it pass without grabbing it and building an entire identity around it. Your own past, with all its mistakes and successes, its joys and sorrows, its things you're proud of and things you regret, all of this is rain falling on the mountain of your present awareness. The rain is real. The mountain is real. But the mountain isn't damaged by the rain. Your awareness right now isn't damaged by any memory, any regret, any past version of yourself. It's simply here, stable, witnessing everything without being diminished by anything. The deepest teaching Thien Ung offered was this: you can't access what you already are. So much spiritual seeking involves trying to become something you're not yet, more peaceful, more enlightened, more stable. But Tran Nhan Tong discovered that the stability was already present, already complete. He just had to stop disturbing himself long enough to notice it. He just had to stop disturbing himself long enough to notice it. Notice right now, beneath all the movement in your mind, beneath all the sensations in your body, beneath all the experiences arising and passing, there's a stable awareness witnessing it all. That awareness isn't striving to be stable. It simply is stable by its very nature. It's like the mountain not trying to be mountain-like, not working to achieve mountainness, just being what it fundamentally is. Let yourself rest as that awareness, not trying to get rid of thoughts or feelings or sensations, not trying to achieve some special state, just recognizing what's already true, that you are the mountain. You've always been the mountain. And all the experiences you've been treating as problems are just rain passing through, unable to harm what you fundamentally are. Breathe slowly, feeling each breath complete itself without your effort. The breath knows its way. The body knows its wisdom. You can trust this ancient intelligence. Let your awareness expand to fill the entire space around you, the room, the building, the night beyond. You are not small or limited. You are vast as the sky, solid as the mountain, unshakable as the earth itself. And now, as words begin to dissolve and meaning gives way to rest, one final story whispers itself into the darkness, inviting you to forget everything and simply be. In a monastery in China, in a time so long ago that even the dynasty's name has been forgotten, there lived a Chan master who was known by a name that wasn't really a name. People called him Wu, which simply means nothing or without. He had been given this name not by any formal ceremony, but because when asked his name, he would always respond, Wu. Wu lived in a small hermitage at the edge of the monastery grounds, near where the bamboo forest met the mountain stream. He was very old, some said 100 years. Some said older, and he did very little. He would sit by the stream. He would sweep the path. He would sometimes stand in the rain. That was all. The younger monks found him frustrating. He never gave Dharma talks. He rarely spoke at all. When students approached him with questions, he would usually just look at them with eyes that seemed to see through and beyond them, and then return to whatever he was doing, or more often, to doing nothing at all. But there was something about Wu that drew people, a quality that couldn't be named. He didn't radiate peace in any dramatic way. He didn't perform miracles. He didn't display wisdom through clever sayings. He simply was. And being near him, something in the mind would quiet without knowing why. One autumn, a monk named Huiming arrived at the monastery. Huiming had been practicing for 20 years, studying with various masters, collecting teachings and techniques. He was learned, accomplished, respected, but he carried a secret burden. Despite all his knowledge, he had no peace. His mind was like a river in flood, always moving, always churning, never still. Someone mentioned Wu to him. There's an old master here, though he teaches nothing. But some say just sitting with him is worth more than 1,000 words. Huiming was skeptical but desperate enough to try anything. He found Wu sitting beside the stream, watching water move over stones. The old master didn't acknowledge Huiming's approach, didn't look up, didn't speak. Huiming bowed and sat down nearby, waiting for instruction. None came. They sat in silence as the stream flowed and the light changed and the afternoon deepened toward evening. Finally, Huiming couldn't contain himself. "Master Wu, I've come seeking teaching. I've studied for 20 years, but found no peace. Can you help me?" Wu said nothing, didn't even look at him, just continued watching the stream. Huiming felt frustration rising. "Master, please. I'm sincere. I need guidance." Still nothing. "Master Wu," the old man finally turned his head slightly, and his eyes met Huiming's. There was no hostility in them, no rejection, but also no particular interest. Just a kind of vast emptiness, like looking into a well that has no bottom. "Wu," the old man said. "Yes, Master Wu. I'm asking, Wu," the old man said again. "I don't understand." "Wu means nothing. Are you saying my question is nothing?" The old master smiled faintly, then returned his attention to the stream. And somehow, in that moment, Huiming understood he wasn't going to get conventional teaching from this man. He settled into sitting, feeling irritated, but also strangely compelled to stay. Days passed like this. Huiming would come sit near Wu. They would sit in silence. Sometimes Wu would do simple tasks, washing a bowl, folding a robe, arranging stones. Sometimes he would just sit. And slowly, despite his frustration, something in Huiming began to settle. The constant mental commentary that usually filled his mind started to quiet. Not because he was trying to quiet it, but because in Wu's presence, the commentary seemed unnecessary. There was nothing to understand, nothing to figure out, nothing to achieve. Just sitting, just the stream flowing, just the bamboo creaking in the wind. One morning, Huiming woke before dawn and went to Wu's hermitage. He found the old master sitting outside, absolutely still, watching the first light touch the mountain peaks. Huiming sat beside him, and together they watched darkness become day, the slow reveal of forms, the gradual emergence of color, the birds beginning their morning calls. Something shifted in Huiming during that watching. He couldn't name what it was, but it felt like a great knot loosening. A tension he'd carried so long, he'd forgotten it was there, finally releasing. Tears began to flow down his face, silent and steady, like the stream nearby. Wu glanced at him, then away, saying nothing. The tears continued, and Huiming realized they weren't tears of sadness or even joy. They were simply release, the falling away of something that had never needed to be carried. After a long time, Huiming spoke. "Master Wu, all these years of study, all these techniques and teachings I've collected, were they all useless?" "Wu," the old man said. Huiming sat with this. Wu could mean nothing. The techniques were nothing. Useless. Or it could mean without affirming or denying. Or it could simply be the master's name, his way of saying, "I am here." All meanings and no meaning simultaneously. "Master," Huiming said slowly, "are you teaching me that there's nothing to seek?" Wu picked up a handful of sand from beside the stream, let it sift through his fingers. The grains fell, returned to the earth, became indistinguishable from all other sand. He said nothing. Huiming watched the sand fall, and something in him understood not with his thinking mind, but somewhere deeper. Every grain of sand was different, unique, and also completely ordinary. Each grain fell according to gravity, landed where it landed, became part of the whole. There was nothing special happening, and yet it was somehow perfect, complete, exactly as it needed to be. The seeking itself is what prevents finding, Huiming whispered, because there's nothing to find. It's already here. It's always been here. Wu smiled slightly, or maybe it was just the play of light on his ancient face, and closed his eyes. Time became strange for Huiming after that. He continued to sit with Wu, but the quality of sitting changed. Before, he'd been sitting while waiting for something, for insight, for peace, for transformation. Now he was simply sitting. The sitting was complete in itself. Nothing needed to be added. Nothing needed to happen. Thoughts still arose in his mind, but they were like wind through the bamboo. They came. They made their sound. They passed through. The bamboo didn't hold on to the wind. The wind didn't damage the bamboo. It was all one flowing movement, and he was somehow both the bamboo and the wind and the space through which they moved. One day, Wu was arranging stones in a small garden beside his hermitage. Huiming watched, mesmerized by the simplicity of the act. Pick up stone. Consider. Place. Move to next stone. No hesitation. No second guessing. No elaboration. Just the pure act of arranging stones. "Master," Huiming said softly, "when you arrange these stones, are you thinking about how they should be?" "Wu." "Are you following some principle of aesthetics?" "Wu." "Then how do you know where to place them?" Wu held a stone in his palm, looked at it, looked at the space in the garden, and placed the stone. Then he looked at Huiming with those bottomless eyes. How does the river know where to flow? The question hung in the air. The river didn't know. It simply flowed according to the terrain, the gravity, the nature of water itself. There was no decision, no planning, no thinking. Just flowing, just responding, just being what it was. Everything is like this. Haiming said, the understanding arriving wordlessly when I stopped trying to control, stopped trying to know, stopped trying to be something other than what I am in this moment. Then life simply flows, like the river, like your stones finding their place, like the sand falling through your fingers. Wu had returned to his stone arranging, seemingly unconcerned with whether Huaiming understood or not. But Huiming felt something vast opening in his chest, not dramatic, not powerful, but like a door he hadn't known was closed, finally swinging open on well-oiled hinges. So natural, so obvious, so completely ordinary and completely profound simultaneously. The weeks passed. Huaiming stopped counting days. He would sit with Wu, sometimes in silence, sometimes watching the old master's simple activities. And more, he found himself simply present, not trying to be present, not practicing presence, just there, aware, empty of agenda, full of this moment exactly as it was. Other monks began to notice a change in Huaiming. The intensity that had always surrounded him, the sense of someone striving, seeking, pushing towards something had dissolved. He moved more slowly. He spoke less. When he did speak, his words were simple, direct, without the elaborate philosophical constructions he'd once favored. One evening, the abbot of the monastery came to Wu's hermitage and found both old master and former seeker sitting by the stream, watching the last light fade. "Brother Haiming," the abbot said, "you've been with Master Wu for 6 months now. What teaching has he given you?" Huaiming looked at the abbot, then at Wu, then at the stream. "Wu," he said finally, and smiled. The abbot frowned. "That's not an answer. Wu is the only answer," Haiming said, but not argumentatively. "Wu means nothing is needed. Wu means without grasping. Wu means the question and the questioner dissolve into the question being asked. Master Wu hasn't taught me anything. He's simply shown me, through his being, that there's nothing to add, nothing to subtract, nothing to fix. Just this. Just now. Just the stream flowing and the light fading and the breath breathing itself." The abbot bowed and left, not understanding but sensing something had shifted in Huiming that words couldn't capture. Months later, spring came to the mountains. The snow melted, the streams swelled, the bamboo sent up new shoots. And one morning, when Huaiming came to sit with Wu, he found the old master had died during the night. He was sitting upright by the stream in his usual posture, eyes closed, a slight smile on his weathered face, as if he'd simply decided to stop breathing and had done so as naturally as he'd done everything else. Huaiming sat beside the body for a long time, feeling no grief, no loss, only a deep gratitude. Wu had taught by not teaching, had given by having nothing to give, had pointed to truth by embodying such complete ordinariness that the extraordinariness of simply being alive became finally, fully visible. They cremated Wu's body with simple ceremony. His ashes were scattered in the stream he'd loved to watch. And Huiming stayed at the hermitage, because he'd come to understand that the hermitage wasn't special because Wu had lived there. Wu had been special because he'd seen that no place, no moment, no person was more special than any other. Everything was sacred because nothing was sacred. Everything mattered because nothing mattered. The teaching was no teaching. The path was no path. The peace was not achieving peace, but recognizing peace had always been here. hidden in plain sight, in the simple flowing of water over stones, in the breath moving in and out, in the absolute ordinariness of being alive. And so Huai Ming became the nothing hermit who taught nothing, who, when asked his name, would say only Wu, who sat by the stream and watched and waited for those rare students ready to discover that what they sought was seeking them, that what they lacked they'd never lacked, that the peace they'd been chasing was the peace they were running from, the peace of being exactly what they were, exactly where they were, exactly as they were, without addition, without subtraction, without needing anything to be different from this very moment in which nothing special happened and everything essential was complete. The stream flowed. The bamboo swayed. The stones sat where they'd been placed. And somewhere, in the space between seeking and finding, between question and answer, between breathing in and breathing out, Wu. Just Wu. Only Wu. Nothing but Wu, which was everything that had ever needed to be known, remembered, understood, or accomplished, all contained in that single syllable that meant nothing and meant without and meant exactly and only this. This breath, this softness, this letting go of even letting go. The stream knows where to flow. You know how to rest. Nothing more is needed. Nothing at all. Wu. 8 journeys. 8 voices. One truth spoken in different tongues across centuries and mountains. From Korean peaks to Thai forests. From Japanese sword halls to Tibetan cliffs. From Vietnamese thrones to Chinese streams. Each story a finger pointing at the same moon. The same unshakable ground beneath the ground. You've traveled with Wulmyong, who learned that the mountain does not move. With Gatikara, whose hands shaped clay whether fortune smiled or frowned. With Ryokan, who forgot to worry and remembered to play. With Tajima, who discovered the immovable mind moves like water. With Ajahn Chah, and the boulder that demonstrates perfect peace. With Karma Yeshi, who became the sky that holds all weather. With Tran Han Tong, the king who learned that rain falls and mountains remain. And finally, with Wu, whose teaching was no teaching, whose answer was always nothing, which contained everything. These weren't just stories. They were mirrors. Each one reflecting something you already know but perhaps forgot, that your fundamental nature has never been disturbed. That awareness itself is unshakable. That you are the space in which all experiences arise and pass without ever being diminished. The mountain doesn't achieve stability. The sky doesn't earn spaciousness. The boulder doesn't strive for peace. They simply are what they are. And in that being, find complete rest. Tonight, you can let this understanding work its way deeper than thought. You don't need to remember every story, every teaching, every word. The wisdom will integrate while you sleep, settling into your bones, becoming part of how you meet tomorrow without effort or intention. The peace you seek isn't waiting in some future moment when conditions finally align. It's here, now, in this breath, in this letting go, in this recognition that you are already what you've been seeking. Let the stories dissolve. Let the meanings fade. Let even the search for meaning release itself like sand through fingers, returning to the earth, becoming part of the whole. You are held. You are safe. You are the mountain, the sky, the stream, the awareness that has never moved from its essential nature. If you found companionship here tonight, if these ancient voices helped your restless mind, remember stillness. Consider sharing this gift with others who lie awake seeking the same ground. A simple like or subscribe helps this wisdom find those who need it most. But even that can wait. Right now, there is only this: your body relaxing completely, your breath flowing effortlessly, your mind releasing its grip on everything it thought it needed to hold. The mountain stands. The stream flows. The sky remains vast. And you, already and always, are peace itself, wearing the temporary costume of seeking peace, playing at being lost when you were never anywhere but home. Rest now. Nothing more is needed. Nothing at all. Just this breath dissolving into darkness, this moment releasing into the next. This awareness remaining untouched by anything that passes through it, stable, silent, unshakable as the mountain at dawn, as the sky before stars, as the space between heartbeats where everything begins and ends and begins again. You are enough. You have always been enough. Good night.